Okay. We are recording.
All right, so it is just after 6:30. We're going to call to order this meeting of the Planning Commission, May 3rd, 2021. Let's all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, at this time, I'll turn it over to, is Angela doing the roll call?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll turn it over to Angela for a roll call of commissioners.
Okay, Chairman Parker,
Here.
Commissioner Wolthius.
Here.
Commissioner Stevens,
Here.
Commissioner Korn,
Here.
Commissioner Journey,
Present.
Commissioner Melcher.
Here.
All are
All right.
present.
So we have this opportunity on our schedule to invite any comment that is not regarding anything on our agenda for tonight. So if someone's got something to say that is not in regards to our applications on the docket tonight, this would be your time. All right, so we'll move on from that. To the commissioners, anything on the meetings from the last two meetings, meeting minutes?
They're just some typos.
Okay, I'll double check those, Eva.
Yes.
I would make a motion to approve the Planning Commission meeting minutes of April 5th and April 19th, 2021.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Turn over to Angela for a roll call vote.
Okay. Commissioner Melcher,
Yes.
Commissioner Journey,
Yes.
Commissioner Korn,
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens,
Yes.
Commissioner Wolthius,
Yes.
and Chairman Parker.
Yes.
Okay. 6 ayes, 0 nays, and no absent.
Wow, nice. All right, so we're going to move on to our public hearing section of the hearing tonight. I will remind anybody that if you are speaking when you come forward, is that mic already on, Blair, or will it?
It's turned on, but I will turn it on when we
Okay.
have people come up.
When you come forward, if you could state your name and address, and then we'll have 3 different times during each application. We'll have people in for, people against, and people neutral. Just make sure you're coming up at the right time so our comments are recorded correctly. All right. At
Chairman
this time,
Parker?
yes.
I just need to add that all testimony should be limited to about 3 minutes.
Okay. Yeah, we do have a fair number of people in the audience, so. All right, so we're gonna open up the hearing for application LA 21-01 at 6:35. Sorry. Midnight glasses stage. The applicable substantive criteria are listed in the staff report. Testimony, arguments, and evidence must be directed toward the criteria described or other criteria in the plan or land use regulation, which the person believes to apply to the decision. Failure to raise an issue accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford the decision maker and the parties an opportunity to respond to the issue precludes the appeal to the Land Use Board of Appeals based on that issue. Okay, so our first application, LA 2101, do any of our commissioners have any personal bias for this application?
No.
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 No. All right, any conflicts of interest?
No.
No. No.
Any ex parte information?
No.
No.
All right. So I will read the application. This is a legislative amendment, LA 21-01, consists of text amendments to chapter 17.24 residential low density, 17.28 residential high density zone, and 17.30 medium density residential zone of the Sweet Home Municipal Code. The proposed text amendments were identified by city staff based on the feedback from the Planning Commission and City Council as a method for improving the quality of housing within the city. The proposal includes amendments to the following sections: Sweet Home Municipal Code 17.24, 17.24090, homes on individual lots, Sweet Home Municipal Code 17.28, 17.28.090, individual homes on individual lots, and 17.3, 17.3.090, standards for homes on individual lots. All right, at this time, I will turn it over to Angela for staff report.
Okay, thank you, Chairman Parker. LA 21-01, we are currently reviewing code updates, chapter 16 and 17 in our second meetings of the month. However, we felt that this amendment should be passed sooner rather than later, which is why it's being brought forward to you. I won't repeat what Chairman Parker just read, but I'll read the finished part of it. In acting on a legislative amendment application, the Planning Commission will hold a public hearing at which it may either recommend that the City Council approve or deny the application. The recommendation should be based on the applicable review and decision criteria. The City Council will hold a public hearing and decide on this application. So a motion after opening the public hearing, receiving testimony, the Planning Commission's options include the following. Move to recommend that the City Council approve application LA 21-01, which includes adopting the ordinance for 2021. Number 2, move to recommend that the City Council deny application LA 21-01 and specify the reasons for doing so. Number 3, move to continue the public hearing to a date and time certain, specify or for other. So I turn it back over to you.
All right. So in this case, our applicant is the City of Sweet Home. Are we inviting applicant testimony? Is our staff going to testify in regards to this, or are we going to move along?
I think that the staff report could adequately presents the staff's view of it. If you have questions of staff, we can certainly respond to those and talk more about what this is about.
All right, and just for sake of clarity, we'll go through all the complete motions for this. At this time, we would invite the proponents of this testimony, those in favor, wishing to speak in favor of the application, to come forward. Not anticipating anything. Those opposed? And any neutral testimony, not in favor nor against.
I do have a letter
Okay.
that we can read into the record from the Fair Housing Council of Oregon. We just barely received it today.
Okay.
And so I can read it in its entirety. Regarding legislative amendment LA 21-01. Dear Commissioners, this letter is submitted jointly by Housing Land Advocates and the Fair Housing Council of Oregon. Both HLA and FHCO are nonprofit organizations that advocate for land use policies and practices that ensure an adequate and appropriate supply of affordable housing for all Oregonians. FHCO's interests relate to a jurisdiction's obligation to affirmatively further fair housing. Please include these comments in the record for the above referenced proposed amendment. As you know, all amendments to the city's comprehensive plan and zoning map must comply with the statewide planning goals, ORS 197.175-2A. When a decision is made affecting the residential land supply, the city must refer to its housing needs analysis, HNA, and buildable land inventory, BLI, in order to show that an adequate number of needed housing units, both housing type and affordability level, will be supported by the residential land supply after enactment of the proposed change. Goal 10 findings are also required for code changes affecting residential development feasibility, such as parking standards and setbacks. The staff report for LA 21-01 does not include findings for the statewide planning goal 10, describing the effects of the amendments on the city. This is despite the staff report stating the proposed text amendments were identified by city staff based on feedback from the Planning Commission and City Council as a method for improving the quality of housing within the city. Therefore, by the staff's own admission, the amendments are directed at housing and hence Goal 10 findings are required. The required Goal 10 findings must demonstrate that the proposed change does not leave the city with less than adequate residential land supplies in the types, locations, and affordability ranges affected. And then it gives several legal cases, which I will not read. Furthermore, because the proposed changes impact the feasibility of manufactured homes and affordable housing type, the report should reference the city's HNA to demonstrate that the city will still be able to provide for its housing needs after the changes go into effect. Only with the complete analysis quantifying the potential gain or loss in the needed housing as stated by the HNA and compared to the BLI can the public understand whether the city is achieving its goals through LA 21-01. In addition, the city should look more closely at standard H, the second H, a typographical error, that states H, exterior siding and finish. The exterior siding of the manufactured home must have the same appearance as materials commonly used on residential dwellings. This is not a clear and objective standard and should be revised so that applicants understand how to meet this otherwise subjective statement. HLA and FHCO urge the Commission to defer adoption of the proposed LA 21-01 until Goal 10 findings can be made and the proposal evaluated under the HNA and BLI. Thank you for your consideration. Please provide written notice of your decision to FHCO and HLA, peacefully field email, etc. Thank you for your consideration. Alan Lazo, Executive Director, Fair Housing Council of Oregon. Jennifer Bragar, President, Housing Land Advocates.
Thank you for reading all that in, Blair. All right, then at this time, we will continue with discussion amongst counselors. We're going to close the public hearing for this application at 6:43. Anybody have any questions they'd like answered from staff in regards to this?
Do we need to postpone? What are your thoughts, Blair? Do we need to postpone and come up with some Goal 10 adoption findings?
Okay, a couple of things. First, on their, there's two different issues here. One is their belief that we're not addressing Goal 10, and second is the criteria that they think is subjective. So as for the criteria, that can be modified in this meeting if we have other ways that we would like to describe that. I think it can be easily modified and no postponement is necessary. As for addressing the Goal 10 and the city's housing needs analysis and buildable lands inventory, we've tried to get funding to do a new housing needs analysis because the one that we have was last done in 2001. It's been a significant amount of time. However, it's not something that's been a priority because we have so much residential land. Essentially, what we're going to learn from a housing needs analysis is that we have the land that we need for residential development. The question is, do we have the land in the right mix of different housing types? And that's something that should be addressed through a housing needs analysis once we get one done. But it also can be done through the city's comprehensive plan, which we are proposing to do in the next fiscal year. So the other issue that I believe is important is that this amendment is not actually changing any type of it's just not changing any land. This is changing the requirements for manufactured dwellings, but it doesn't change where manufactured dwellings can be placed. It doesn't change the supply of land. Now they argue that it would affect affordability. However, really, it's more of a safety issue than anything. It brings those manufactured homes up to current code level when it comes to new homes, and this code language was actually taken from a mixture of other cities. So this is, if anybody has a problem with this here, they've got a lot of other cities to sue as well. So I'm not sure that it's, in my opinion, it's not enough reason to postpone. But that's certainly up to you.
So I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
So in the past, when we've gone over this topic, we've talked about having a covered porch over the front door. And I did not see that in this language. And if I remember right, there were several commissioners who were positive about that feature.
Okay, that, to my knowledge now, and this, it could be that there were discussions that happened before I arrived that I was not aware of.
These discussions have been going on for a long time.
Right. So that was not my, didn't come up in my understanding, and I apologize for that. If that's something that you would like featured in something like this, we can certainly look at modifying it.
So I would like to see it featured.
Okay.
So that's one thing. And then there are some typos that just need to be corrected before it actually becomes official.
So in the ordinance itself, you mean?
Correct.
Right. And we can address those before it goes on to the city council.
Okay.
What was going to be addressed as far as the exterior siding finish?
So there's a couple ways you can address that. You can point to houses in the immediate vicinity and say it's got to have a type of roofing and siding that matches, that is a similar construction to houses in the neighborhood. You can also specify what you're talking about. Does that mean you want to make sure that they have wood or composite siding, or composite shingles, that kind of thing, or do you want to go out and say no sheet metal siding and no sheet metal roofing is allowed on such structures? You could address it that way. What the letter said was basically that we're not specific enough, and that's their argument with it.
So the point about that is that we're very specific about roofing material. So in G, item G, it lists the type of roofing materials that are okay. But for siding, we don't. For siding, so that to me is a little bit of a discrepancy. I don't know if the other commissioners think that's important or not, but
yeah,
seems like if we're going to be specific about one thing, why are we not specific about the other?
Mm-hmm. And that's perfectly something that we can address and change as you direct.
I just had a question and a comment on utilities. It kind of implies that telephone lines and all utilities will be underground. We live in a day with a lot of people not having a landline, but cell phones only. And we also live in a city with an awful lot of overhead power lines. It kind of looks like the burden of that decision is upon the applicant, but somehow or other we ought to be lenient.
The city has rules for new development when it comes to undergrounding of facilities. It's most just about anybody who's putting in a new home, they usually prefer undergrounding rather than overhead lines.
I agree.
And so this is talking about the placement of individual homes. I suppose that might be a barrier for some, but in most of these homes would go into infill lots where the street either already has undergrounded utilities or it has overhead lines, and the only thing that needs to be undergrounded is the line from those main lines to the house, which usually is kind of a component of construction. They just do it at the same time.
But it looks like the city official has to waive those requirements.
If they wanted to have them above ground, it would have to be waived. So they're required to put them underground. If they're new, any new lines would have to go underground. Yes.
Anyone else have any questions or comments regarding anything they want clarification on from staff?
Yeah, are we going to settle this siding issue tonight?
So your options are you could instruct staff to revise the ordinance the proposed ordinance in a way that you describe in your motion. Another option to you is to make amendments to the ordinance in your motion and make a motion to pass it, to recommend it proceed to the city council with your amendments that you specify. So whoever would make the motion would need to specify that you know what change you would want to see when it comes to the citing or any other change that you'd want to see addressed. The typos, that's not necessary to do in a motion. We can take care of that before the goes to the city council.
But what about the covered porch?
That same thing. If you want to specify that, if you know what language you would want to include, we could include that. But if you want staff to work at researching it and drafting that, and then bring it back to you, we certainly can do that too.
Well, I think the wording is reasonably acceptable the way it is.
We meet again in 2 weeks to review more code
Mhm.
updates. Maybe we could look at this again. Would we
Uh,
have to, we'd have to do a public hearing, wouldn't we, or advertise it, or just would we be able to?
We have been advertising those as regular meetings.
Okay.
So for you, the public hearing is required to hear from the public on this particular thing. Nobody has commented in any on this application.
So we wouldn't be required
And
to
so
get,
we wouldn't be required to do
Yeah.
a public hearing again
okay.
on that issue.
Would the commissioners be in favor of postponing this for 2 weeks to allow staff to bring back some comments,
Possible revisions.
revisions?
Yes.
Okay. If anybody wants to make a motion to table this application until our next meeting.
I would appreciate at least a consensus on what we should draft. So
So-
there's been some ideas. I just want to make sure that
I
everybody's in
think the
agreement. with that.
concerns are obviously the citing,
Mhm.
clarification on language, looking for some kind of verbiage about the front porch, whether it shall be covered or not covered, allowed to be covered. So I don't know if we want to look at other municipalities and what they have
Mhm.
on record already, or if we want to come up with something completely on our own.
I mean, we can do that. I just wanted to make sure that all the commission was interested in that change.
It would be nice to see. I would think it would
Or
help.
if you want us to provide options,
Yeah. Yeah, maybe two different options.
okay? Okay,
So I move that we table this discussion till the meeting on the 17th. Today's the 3rd plus 14. May
May
17th
17th.
or May 17th. At which time we'll discuss the concerns that were raised here tonight.
I would second that.
Okay, at this time, we'll turn it over to Angela for a roll call vote.
Okay, Commissioner Wolthius,
Yes.
Commissioner Korn,
Yes.
Commissioner Melcher,
Yes.
Chairman Parker,
Yes.
Chairman Stevens. Or, sorry,
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens
Yes.
and Commissioner Journey.
Yes.
Okay, so this LA 2101 will be continued to the May 17th meeting where staff will prepare some options for additional language.
All right, thank you so much. All right, this time we are going to move on to application CU 21-04. We'll open the public hearing at 6:55. The applicable substantive criteria are listed in the staff report. Testimony, arguments, and evidence must be directed toward the criteria described or other criteria in the plan or land use regulation, which the person believes to apply to the decision. Failure to raise an issue accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford the decision maker and the parties an opportunity to respond to the issue precludes the appeal to the Land Use Board of Appeals based on that issue. All right, so this is application again, CU 21-04. The applicant has requested a conditional use permit to establish a retail marijuana store in an existing building. The subject property contains approximately 23,015 square feet and is in a commercial highway C2 zone. Tax lot 800 is a legal lot of record survey per survey CS 26417. dated April 10th, 2018. A marijuana dealer or medical dispensary is permitted through a conditional use permit in our Sweet Home Municipal Code 17.36.030 J. So I will turn it over to staff for the report.
Actually, Chairman Parker, you go through the bias and the ex parte.
Oh, yes, that is correct. Thank you so much.
You're
My head's
welcome.
a little jumbled. Do any of our commissioners have any personal bias to this application?
No.
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 Any conflicts of interest?
No.
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 Any ex parte information?
No.
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 No, I'm acquainted with the site.
Okay. All right, Angela, we will go to you for staff report.
Okay, thank you, Chairman Parker. The subject property is located at 2252 Main Street, Sweet Home, Oregon, 97386. As Chairman Parker read, the applicant has requested a conditional use permit to establish a retail marijuana store in an existing building. The surrounding properties are commercial and recreation commercial. The property is not on a floodplain or doesn't have a wetland. There is access to the property from Highway 20. The proposed use would be in the existing building on the property, and the applicant has not requested to increase the footprint of the building. The subject property is in the C2 zone. The applicant would need to provide all parking as required by the applicable sections of Sweet Home Municipal Code, section 17.08.090. A retail store requires one space for every 200 square feet of floor area. The building that would accommodate the store contains approximately 3,752 square feet. If the entire building is used, 19 parking spaces would be required. There are 14 pre-existing parking stalls to the building. The Planning Commission can add a condition of approval that the applicant add the 5 parking stalls to bring the count to 19 stalls. Pedestrian access to the store would likely occur from the west side of the building in order to minimize the potential for odor impacts from the property. Staff recommends that a condition of approval should require that no marijuana odor be permitted to leave the subject property. The proposed use would be regulated by the OLCC and would be required to comply with all applicable security standards. The applicant would need to acquire all applicable state and federal permits prior to the operation of the proposed use. Any sign used to advertise the proposed use shall comply with the sign standards listed in Sweet Home Municipal Code 17.96, as well as any applicable Oregon Department of Transportation ODOT requirements. Based on the review of the Sweet Home ArcGIS map, the nearest school is located approximately 1,208 feet to the southwest. The nearest residentially zoned property is located approximately 258 feet to the south. The retail store is outside the ordinance boundary and is therefore permitted in the proposed location. Scroll down. The recommended conditions of approval. Number 1, the proposed marijuana retail store shall be located within an existing building located on the subject property. The proposed marijuana retail store shall be limited to the activities evaluated under this application. Number 2, the use shall be operated so that no marijuana odor is permitted to leave the subject property. Number 3, as required by Sweet Home Municipal Code 17.36.090, exterior lighting shall be in such a manner so as not to face directly, shine, or reflect glare onto the street, a highway, or a lot in a residential zone. Prior to operation, the applicant shall obtain all required local, state, and federal permits. The property owner shall obtain all necessary permits from the Building Division and Engineering Division. These permits may include, but are not limited to, building, electrical, mechanical, and plumbing permits from the Building Division, and a new or amended access permit from the Oregon Department of Transportation, ODOT. The applicant shall obtain all necessary permits from the Oregon Liquor Control Commission, OLCC. The applicant shall submit copies of all required permits and licenses to the Sweet Home Community and Economic Development Department for inclusion in the record of CU 21-04. Excuse me. Parking shall be provided for the marijuana retail store as required by the Sweet Home Municipal Code. Parking facilities shall comply with all applicable sections of the Sweet Home Municipal Code 17.08.090, including but not limited to all stormwater, drainage, surfacing, and dimensional standards. All parking lots and driveway approaches shall be hard surface and permanently marked. Number 6, any sign used to advertise the proposed use shall comply with all sign standards listed in Sweet Home Municipal Code 17.96. as well as any applicable Oregon Department of Transportation ODOT requirements. The conditional use permit shall be void 1 year after the date of the Planning Commission approval if the use has not been substantially established as defined under 17.08 80.070A within that time period. The city planner may grant one extension of up to 1 year for a conditional use permit that contained a 1-year initial duration upon written request of the applicant and prior to the expiration of the approved period. Requests other than 1 year requests made prior to the expiration of approved period must be approved by the Planning Commission. A conditional use permit not meeting the above timeframes will be expired and a new application will be required. In taking action on a conditional use permit, the Planning Commission will hold a public hearing at which it may either approve or deny the applications. If the application is denied, the action must be based on the applicable review and design criteria. If approved, the Planning Commission may impose conditions of approval. Staff's recommended conditions are included in Section 4. Appeal period. Staff recommends that the Planning Commission decision on this matter be subject to a 12-day appeal period from the date of the notice of the decision is mailed. Order. After the Planning Commission makes a decision, staff recommends that Planning Commission direct staff to prepare an order that is signed by the chairperson of the Planning Commission. The order would memorialize the decision and provide the official list of conditions, if any, that apply to the approval and the application is approved. Motion. After opening the public hearing and receiving testimony, the Planning Commission's options include the following. 1, move to approve application CU 21-04, which includes adopting the findings of fact listed in the staff report and the conditions of approval listed in Section 4 of the staff report. The setting of a 12-day appeal period from the date of the mailing of the decision, and hereby direct staff to prepare an order to be signed by the chair to memorialize this decision. Number 2, move to deny application CU 21-04, which includes adopting the findings of fact. You need to specify, including the setting of a 12-day appeal period from the date of mailing of the decision, and hereby direct staff to prepare an order to be signed by the chair to memorialize the decision. Number 3, move to continue the public hearing to a date and time certain. Please specify or for other.
All right. Thank you so much, Angela. At this time, I would like to invite our applicant, if they're here.
Applicant
forward.
is online through Teams.
We've got somebody in-house.
Oh, in-house too. Oh, okay.
Okay, come on forward. Go ahead and just state your name and address and purpose of your application.
Dustin Pomeroy, 43101 North River Drive, here in Sweet Home, Oregon. We are just wanting to move the existing dispensary that we already have, the Going Green, to a new location where we'd actually be owners of that building.
Okay.
And only the front half would actually be used for the retail. So the parking, there's more parking spaces in that particular building than the one we're currently in.
Any of the commissioners have any questions for our applicant?
What is your present location?
925 Main Street.
What is that?
It's right in between Subway and Napa.
And you are kind of just crammed in there. So,
All right, if none of our other commissioners have any questions for our applicant, I'll thank you. You can go ahead and have a seat. Stick around. We may have time for you to come back up. At this time, we're looking for any proponents, anyone wishing to speak in favor of the application. Does anybody else wish to speak in favor of the application? All right. Any opponents to this application? Anyone wishing to speak neutral testimony, not in favor or against? All right, so we're going to go ahead and close the public hearing for CU 2104 for discussion amongst the counselors at 7:05. Anybody have any questions?
so our current code requires 19 parking spots for this use or the size of the building? Is
Yeah.
that what we are
Yeah, based on the size of the building.
on the size of the building?
Angela,
Okay.
you can speak to that.
Yeah, so it's the square footage of a retail space. So currently pre-existing with the building that they're buying, there are 14 spaces. The square footage of the building, our code states, 1 spot for every 200 square feet. So if they're if they're not using the entire part of the building for retail space, we may be able to reduce that number. The 14 may be enough.
So do we need a letter of confirmation stating exactly how many square footage they're going to be using to address the parking issue?
Yes, that would be adequate. I can have them, we can require that as a condition of approval for them to get me a copy of exactly what portion of that space they're going to use.
Better tell him that he's got his students.
Any
You
other
guys have-
questions? What's that?
I was just going to say, do you need anything else from me for that?
No, I think that would solve a lot of our questions as far as parking if the entire building wasn't being used.
Okay.
I would think 14 spaces would be adequate. I mean, even if they had 3 for staff, that's still 11 customers at one time.
Which is substantially more than what they
Right.
have currently.
Mhm.
I would comment. Most of the traffic will be in and out, not a lengthy parking time. And I also think that 14 would be adequate, more than adequate. And I think for the sake of the record that we should just note that our action tonight is dealing with the legality of the location. Nothing more, nothing less.
Correct. And we are relocating the business and not opening an additional one. If it's all right with the commissioners, I'd like to reopen the public portion of the hearing to see what our applicant had one more thing to say. If that's all right with
All
everyone.
right.
Okay, I'm gonna reopen the public hearing at 7:08. So go ahead and come on forward. And just for the record, state your name and address again, please.
Dustin Conroy, 43101 North River Drive. So just a rough estimate, it's gonna be roughly about 1,500 square feet. That would be the front of the actual retail area. Everything else would be either office or lobby, the restrooms, or bowls and stuff like that. So
Okay, I think what would help us out and would help out staff is if you guys were to write a letter stating exactly how many square feet you're gonna use, and then the parking can be calculated from that.
sounds good.
So I think they'll be contacting you in regards to that.
Okay.
So thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, we're gonna close the public meeting for a vote amongst counselors at 7:09. All right. Anybody like to add anything, criteria to it?
I would make a motion that we approve the request of the applicant to establish a retail marijuana store in an existing building. That would be CU 21-04. It's probably enough.
Okay.
You want to go for findings? Report, you want to add that?
You can. According to findings in the staff report.
All right. So we have a motion to adopt, including the findings in the staff report.
I'll second that.
Motion and a second. Angela, we'll turn it over to you for a roll call vote.
Did you want to add the condition that a letter be provided for the
Yes,
certifying the area?
with the
parking purposes?
additional condition that the applicant provide a letter or site plan indicating the space utilized for retail sales in the building.
Okay. Is the motion and a second in agreement with that? Then?
We are.
Okay.
Thank you.
Just so the motion's clear.
Thank you.
You ready?
Yes.
Okay. Commissioner Corn,
Yes.
Commissioner Journey,
Yes.
Commissioner Melcher,
Yes.
Chairman Parker,
Yes.
Commissioner Wolthius,
Yes.
and Commissioner Stevens.
Yes.
Okay, 6 ayes, no nays, and no absences. Motion passes.
All right. So the staff will be contacting you in regards to your letter for signatures. Thank you. All right. This time we're gonna open the public hearing for application CU 21-05 at 7:12. The applicable substantive criteria are listed in the staff report. Testimony, arguments, and evidence must be directed toward the criteria described or other criteria in the plan or land use regulation which the person believes to apply to the decision. Failure to raise an issue accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford the decision maker or the parties an opportunity to respond to the issue precludes the appeal to the Land Use Board of Appeals based on that issue. Well, I will read this. Application CU 21-05, the applicant is requesting a conditional use permit to establish a home occupation, home business on their property. The home occupation would consist of a notary service for residential home loan document applicants operated by the resident of the property within the dwelling located on the property. The applicant expects to see between 1 to 2, but potentially up to 6 clients per day, with hours ranging from 1 to 2 clients. So we might have to fix that. The applicant will contain all the parking on the subject property. The applicant will be the only employee. The subject property contains approximately 19,222 square feet and is in the residential low density R1 zone. All right, do any of our commissioners have any personal bias against this application?
No.
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 Any conflicts of interest?
Nope.
No.
No.
Any ex parte information?
No.
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 All right, this time I'll turn it over to Angela for our staff report.
Okay, CU 21-05. The subject property is located at 4511 Long Street, Sweet Home, Oregon 97386. The proposed home occupation is located in a residential low-density neighborhood. It is not in a floodplain, does not have any wetlands on the property, and has frontage along Long Street. Per the applicant's comments, the home office is an 11 by 10 room and includes a guest room. Both rooms are partitioned during work hours. There is an interior entrance partition that separates the home office door and entrance door that directs clients from entering the rest of the home. Up to 4 client vehicles can park in the off-street concrete driveway. The applicant states that they will likely have no more than 2 clients signing loan documents at a given time. There is a seat for each of them. The guest restroom accommodates 1 user at a time. Traffic will be minimal and by appointment. The applicant states that they have a good rapport with the neighbors and does not foresee a disruption for neighbors due to light traffic and low no business noise at the residence. Staff finds that the site dimensions, location, topography, and access are adequate for the proposed use. Conditions of approval. Number 1, the home occupation will be conducted in a manner consistent with the representations made by the applicant in an application and hearing process. Number 2, all aspects of the home occupation shall be contained and conducted within a completely enclosed building as proposed in this application. Parking may occur outdoors in compliance with the Sweet Home Municipal Code. Number 3, vehicles related to the home occupation shall be parked in a manner so as not to block any driveway or impede the safe flow of traffic. Number 4, the property owner shall obtain and comply with all other applicable local, state, and federal permits and requirements. In taking action on a conditional use permit, the Planning Commission will hold a public hearing at which it may either approve or deny the applications. If the application is denied, the action must be based on the applicable review and design criteria. If approved, the Planning Commission may impose conditions of approval. Staff's recommended conditions are included in Section 4. The appeal period, staff recommends that Planning Commission's decisions on this matter be subject to a 12-day appeal period from the date that the notice decision is mailed. Order. After the Planning Commission makes a decision, staff recommends that the Planning Commission direct staff to prepare an order that is signed by the chairperson of the Planning Commission. The order would memorialize the decision and provide the official list of conditions, if any, that apply to the approval if the application is approved. Motion, after opening the public hearing and receiving testimony, the planning commission's options include the following. Number one, move to approve application CU 21-05, which includes adopting the findings of fact listed in the staff report and the conditions of approval listed in section 4 of the staff report. The setting of a 12-day appeal period from the date of the mailing of the decision, and hereby direct staff to prepare an order to be signed by the chair to memorialize this decision. 2, move to deny application CU 21-05, which includes adopting the findings of fact. Specify that, including the setting of a 12-day appeal period from the date of mailing of the decision, and hereby direct staff to prepare an order to be signed by the chair to memorialize the decision. Number 3, move to continue the public hearing to a date and time certain, specify, or for other.
All right, thank you. All right, at this time, I'd like to invite our applicant to come forward. Go ahead and have a seat and then state your name and address and the purpose of your application.
My name is Shantara Taft. My address is 4511 Long Street. And the purpose of the application is to basically take backfill in busy times when there's a lot of mortgage loans being signed because of the COVID restrictions. A lot of people don't want, which is the normal place to sign your home loans. They don't want to invite people into their home, and there's not places like Starbucks or other typical places, you know, like restaurants, whatever, to go and meet. And so I thought, well, I'll try to help. So this is just as a backup.
Okay. Do any of the commissioners have any questions for our applicant? I think the only one I would have is in some of the wording on the request is in the hours of operation. Do you see any kind of potential start and stop times during the day? I know you're probably going to be seeing a little bit of flux trying to work with people's work schedules that can't make it to the banks from 9 to 5.
Yeah, that's going to be my last resort, is my own home.
Yeah.
And in that case, there really isn't a typical, but I would definitely, if it was, you know, someone opposing, I would definitely keep it between business hours.
Yeah, I don't
9 to
even,
5 or something.
I don't know that it would come to that as much as it would be like something to say, you know, no clients after 9 p.m. or something
Oh,
like
yeah,
that.
I don't want to
Okay.
work that late either.
Yeah. All right. Anybody else have any? No? Well, thank you so much. Hang around. We might have to invite you back up. All right. Do we have any proponents to this application? Those wishing to speak in favor of the application? Anybody wishing to speak in opposition? Any neutral testimony on our application? No. All right. So at 7:19, we'll close the public hearing for CU 21-05 for discussion amongst the council. Commission? No questions? No? All right.
I don't see any problems.
Anybody like to take the next step?
I'd make a motion to approve CU 21-05, with including the staff findings and using their recommended conditions, which are all just completely basic home business stuff.
I would second that.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Angela, I'll turn it over to you for a roll call vote.
Okay. Chairman Parker,
Aye.
Commissioner Walthius,
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens,
Aye.
Commissioner Korn,
Yes.
Commissioner Journey,
Yes.
and Commissioner Melcher.
Yes.
Okay, 6 ayes, no nays, no absent. Motion passes.
Congratulations. Thank you for your time. All right. Moving right along. All right, at this time, which is 7:21. We're going to open the public hearing for application CU 21-06. The applicable substantive criteria are listed in the staff report. Testimony, arguments, and evidence must be directed toward the criteria described or other criteria in the plan or land use regulation, which the person believes to apply to the decision. Failure to raise an issue accompanied by the statements or evidence sufficient to afford the decision maker and the parties an opportunity to respond to the issue precludes the appeal to the Land Use Board of Appeals based on that issue. So CU 21-06. The applicant is requesting a conditional use permit to allow for a single-family dwelling in the recreational commercial RC zone. A residential use not related to or in conjunction with a recreational development is allowed per a conditional use. Sweet Home Municipal Code 17.60030D. The subject property contains approximately 4,997 square feet and is in the recreational RC zone. So, do any of our commissioners have any personal bias in regard to this application?
No.
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 Any conflicts of interest?
No.
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 All right, any ex parte information?
Nope.
No.
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 All right, this time, Angela, I will turn it back over to you for our staff report.
Okay. The subject property abuts 5973 Nandina Street to the west, Sweet Home, Oregon 97386. It's identified on the Lynn County Assessor's Map as 13S01E 27DA, tax lot 01401. The subject property is surrounded by single-family homes in the recreation commercial zone. The subject property is not in a floodplain and does not have any wetlands. The property fronts Nandina Street and has access to city water and sewer services. Staff finds that the size, dimensions, location, topography, and access are adequate for the needs of the proposed use. Per the staff engineer's comments, there is an 8-inch sanitary sewer line available in Nandina Street. There's also an 8-inch water line extended from 60th Avenue to the fire hydrant on Nandina Street. Both city services are available for connection. There is no storm drainage available on Nandina Street. And with that said, as you will notice, the recreation commercial zone was before my time. However, you notice in that area besides the RV park, it is all single family residential currently there pre-existing. So we recommend the conditions of approval. The construction, number one, the construction and use of a single family dwelling will be conducted in a manner consistent with the representations made by the applicant in the application and hearing process. Number two, the applicant shall provide the proposed property with its own water and sewer services. The access and utility easements shall be clearly identified. Number three, upon development of the proposed parcel, the property owner shall construct all applicable street, sidewalk, and storm drain improvements that are required by and according to the provisions of the Sweet Home Municipal Code at the time of development. The applicant will be required to sign a development agreement with the Community and Economic Development KED Engineering Services Department for the unimproved roadway. All applicable improvements must comply with the standards listed in the Sweet Home Municipal Code at the time of development. The new property line shall be situated so that all buildings and structures comply with the yard setback requirements of the recreation commercial zone. The property owner shall obtain and comply with all other applicable local, state, and federal permits and requirements. In taking action on a conditional use permit, the Planning Commission will hold a public hearing at which it may either approve or deny the application. If the application is denied, the action must be based on the applicable review and design criteria. If approved, the Planning Commission may impose conditions of approval. Staff recommended conditions are included in Section 4. Appeal period. Staff recommends that the Planning Commission decision on this matter be subject to a 12-day appeal period from the date that the notice of decision is mailed. Order. After the Planning Commission makes a decision, staff recommends that the Planning Commission direct staff to prepare an order that is signed by the chairperson of the Planning Commission. The order would memorialize the decision and provide official list of conditions, if any, that apply to the approval of the application if it's approved. Motion. After opening the public hearing and receiving testimony, the Planning Commissioner's options include the following. Number one, move to approve application CU 21-06, which includes adopting the findings of fact listed in the staff report and the conditions of approval listed in Section 4 of the staff report. The setting of a 12-day appeal period from the date of mailing of the decision, and hereby direct staff to prepare an order to be signed by the chair to memorialize this decision. Number two, move to deny application CU 21-06, which includes adopting of the findings in fact. Please specify, including the setting of a 12-day appeal period from the date of the mailing of the decision, and thereby hereby direct staff to prepare an order to be signed by the chair to memorialize this decision. Number 3, move to continue the public hearing to a date and time certain. Please specify or for other.
All right, thank you. At this time, if our applicant is in the room, I would invite them to come forward. Let's see our applicant anywhere. All right. Is there anyone in the room wishing to speak in favor of this application? Anyone wishing to speak against this application? Go ahead and please come forward. Again, have a seat and state your name and address.
Jonathan Bogus, 5973 Gandina,
Okay,
adjacent lot. Your guys' findings, they had little impact to the neighborhood, but I kind of beg to differ. We bought the home 12 years ago. Being the last house on the end of a dead-end street, to me, that adds value to my property. And with the zoning that was in place, didn't seem to be a buildable or residential when I purchased our home. So to me, it feels like the value of my property is being decreased by granting this. I mean, the lot size is, from what I can read in the code, is too small. Everywhere I see lot size 80 foot in the frontage, and then 8,000 square foot is a buildable lot. Is that not the case?
it depends on the zoning.
Can I answer to that, Chairman Parker?
Yes, please.
So it is a pre-existing non-conforming lot. So it is a lot that already exists. So it is a buildable lot. It just has to adhere to the R1 standards, which means all the setbacks still, no matter what the size of it, all the setbacks have to be followed, which is, 20-foot front, 5 minimum, 13 total side, 15 back, and then the house size minimum. So it is a buildable lot and it is pre-existing non-conforming, which is in our code. So they can build on it as long as they follow the rest of the criteria for that zone.
I just wanted to raise my objections to it, and so
Okay, and your property is directly to the west?
directly to the west, yes. When we bought the property, the owners of the RV park owned that lot.
Mhm.
And there was plans to build some kind of cafe, but it never, I think the owner passed away. Then it went to the county, so.
So you own the apartment building?
No,
No, he's,
I own 5973, which is directly to the house directly to the west of that.
he owns this one right here.
Okay, I'm on ahead.
That's okay.
It, without having some kind of guarantee from the current owner or some kind of plan, so far they haven't been a good neighbor. So I
Are
don't know
they,
what's gonna happen to the property. Are you gonna rent it out and who's gonna move in next door? So far, they came in, cleared trees off of it and left it. And now I have blackberries 6 feet high and, that's it. But they've never came to us to say, here, well, this is what we're doing. Nothing.
Angela, on the staff side, do we require a excavation permit tied to a building permit prior to clearing a lot?
You can clear a lot. You just can't demo a building without a permit, but you can take out, trees and brush, and you can even start doing some site prep before. But other than that, you have to have a permit, but just clearing the lot, no, you don't. Any fill and grade, yes. Any demolition, yes, but not removing trees and brush.
So it sounds like they are, well, going pretty slow, going through the process to get the lot ready to maybe improve the neighborhood instead of having that mess that's currently there right now. Well, it's yet to be seen. Yeah. Right.
I just wanted to state my opinion so that
Yeah.
if I need to raise an objection later, appeal it, I can,
Absolutely.
you know. So far I haven't like contacted a lawyer or anything. I'm just reading what I know about code,
Okay.
in my occupation, and so.
Well, thank you so much. We will take your testimony into consideration. Is there anybody else in our audience that wishes to speak against this application? Any neutral testimony? All right, with that, we are going to close the public hearing at 7:32 on CU 21-06 for discussion amongst the commission.
So coincidentally, when I saw the lot size, I did some digging in the code and saw that the minimum lot size for this district is 8,000 square feet. So I did come in and speak to city staff and did learn that it is a pre-existing non-conforming lot that is buildable. And they just need to follow setbacks and put something on there that will meet that.
I think this is another case too of the RC zone coming back to haunt us. So, and I know there are plans in the rezone and everything like that to definitely amend the size of that current zone. So
How is that street currently improved? Are there sidewalk, curb, gutter? Just nothing? Just asphalt?
It's not very improved. It had an overlay a few years ago, so it has maybe 20 feet. It's probably more like 16 to 18 feet of 2-inch asphalt on a gravel base. That's all the right of way, which is very small, we'll admit.
Will the owner applicant be required to put in sidewalk or any other
In
improvements?
this particular case and others in the area that have been recently developed, they have a development agreement to do that at some future date. Considering, however, that there's probably a good 500 to 1,000 feet to the west before you come to any other sidewalk segment, and maybe you can get to 60th Avenue. There's no plan at the moment to make any improvements to 59th Avenue or Nandina Street there. Not at this moment.
Does Nandina go through to the parking lot there? It's
No.
blocked off.
No, it stops at the next property east of this one in question. There's a fence along the edge there. The only thing that progresses beyond it over to 60th Avenue is the water and the sewer line. It was laid out like this a very long time ago in the original Foster District subdivisions, and it does not go any further east than one more property, which is the same size as this one. Then it stops at the private parking lot of Lane County's RV park.
maybe a bit unrelated to this application, but is that section of fence at the end of Nandina, is that any kind of a designed breakaway panel as far as fire truck access or anything like that? Do we know?
I believe it was. And I haven't been there for a little while, off of 60th, but because of the poor access down 59th Avenue, I believe it was intended to be operable. It might have to cut the chain that holds that fence together.
Or drive a
But,
really big truck through it?
Yeah, well, it's a pretty expensive truck to push through a chain though. But I think that flexibility was there at the time. That's why it's not a concrete wall at the end of the street.
Well, I think a lot of this, we might have our hands tied in the fact that it is pre-existing non-conforming. Um, in the haunting RC zone.
And I just want to say again, because this has happened in the past, and that it's troubling that the applicant is not present to state their case.
I agree with that statement.
So I do send out emails to all applicants, letting them know the time and the place. It is not recommended, or I mean, it is not required, but I do tell them that it's recommended. Just,
Yeah, and I mean, I remember that. I'm just saying.
yeah.
Angela, did they come in and meet with city staff?
I've talked to them on the phone about it. So they're not right here in Sweet. I can't remember if they live right here in Sweet Home or they're right outside of town, but I have talked to them several times on the phone.
I don't see is that we have any way to not allow this according to our development code. Would you guys agree with that?
Fortunately, I think I would have to agree with that.
So I guess I would make a motion to approve application CU 21-06, adopt the findings of fact and the conditions of approval in section 4 of the staff report, set the 12-day appeal period from the date of the mailing of the decision, and direct staff to prepare an order to be signed by the chair.
I second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Angela, I'll turn it over to you for a roll call vote.
Okay, Commissioner Stevens,
Yes.
Commissioner Wolthius,
Yes,
Chairman Parker,
Yes.
Commissioner Melcher,
Yes.
Commissioner Journey,
Yes,
and Commissioner Korn.
Yes.
Okay. 6 ayes, no nays, no absent. Motion passes.
Thank you. Thank you for your time, folks. All right, at this time, we're gonna open the public hearing to discuss application VR 21-01 at 7:39 PM. The applicable substantive criteria are listed in the staff report. Testimony, arguments, and evidence must be directed toward that criteria described or other criteria in the plan or land use regulation, which the person believes to apply to the decision. Failure to raise an issue accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford the decision maker and the parties an opportunity to respond to the issue precludes the appeal to the Land Use Board of Appeals based on that issue. So application VR 21-01, the applicant is seeking a variance to allow for a front setback of 15 feet instead of the required 20 feet. A front yard abutting a residential zone shall be a minimum of 20 feet per Sweet Home Municipal Code 17.32.040. The western property line of the proposed parcel abuts a residential zone. The reduction of the front setback is due to the Sweet Home Fire District requiring an additional square footage for a fire apparatus turnaround. The southern portion of the proposed parcel is within the 50-foot riparian zone and is designated as a natural resource zone and is a significant wetland. Streets, roads, pathways are exceptions in the riparian zone per Sweet Home Municipal Code 17.72.050. The property is in the commercial central C1 zone. Do any of our commissioners have any personal bias in regards to this application?
No.
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 All right. Any conflicts of interest?
No.
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 Any ex parte information?
No.
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 All right. That being said, is our applicant in the room with us tonight? if you come forward, have a seat, state.
Chairman,
Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm jumbled again. You can have a seat if you'd like and just hang out while Angela reads our staff report.
all right, you ready?
Yeah.
Okay. The subject property is one lot east of 925 Long Street, Sweet Home, Oregon, 97386, identified on Lynn County Assessor's Map as 13S01E, 31AC, tax lot 11700. The subject property has commercial properties to the north and east and has residential properties to the south and west. The subject property is in the special flood hazard area, the natural resource zone, and has a wetland on the southern portion of the lot. The proposed development would have access from Long Street and has access to city water and sewer services. The situation that created the need for variance was not created by the applicant. The situation is due to the southern portion of the proposed property being within a 50-foot riparian corridor and is designated as a significant wetland. The applicant has proposed a parking area within the wetland and abutting the riparian corridor buffer. The following activities may be accepted from the requirements of this chapter upon administrative review approval that they are designed to meet the standard listed in this chapter. A, drainage facilities, utilities, and irrigation pumps. B, streets, roads, driveways, or path, per Sweet Home Municipal Code 17.72050 A through B. Staff has not identified any reason why the applicant's proposed variance would be detrimental to public health or safety. Staff has not identified any goals or policies of the comprehensive plan that would preclude the proposed variance. Staff finds that the proposed variance is the minimum request necessary to make reasonable use of the property. The southern portion of the property, the proposed property, is within the 50-foot riparian zone and is designated as a significant wetland. The City of Sweet Home has adopted safe harbor setback methodology for the identification of significant riparian corridors and significant wetlands. These resources are identified on the local wetlands inventory and riparian inventory maps. Property owners are responsible to have a qualified professional identify the wetland boundaries on the affected property. Setbacks for structures within a riparian corridor are measured from the top of bank, which is the line of ordinary high water in a 2-year event. Ames Creek has a 50-foot wide vegetative corridor per side. Staff finds that requested variance is consistent with the purposes of the C1 zone and the NR zones. Staff has not identified any negative impacts resulting from the proposed variance. Staff has not identified any characteristics or features of the variance proposed that would have an adverse impact on the property values, livability of the development in the surrounding area, or the natural environment. Staff finds the applicant has met the criteria listed above in section 3. As a result, staff recommends the approval of VR 21-01. Staff has not recommended any conditions of approval. Planning Commission action. The Planning Commission will hold a public hearing at which it may either approve or deny the application. If the application is denied, the action must be based on the applicable review and decision criteria. The appeal period, staff recommends that the Planning Commission's decision on the matter be subject to a 12-day appeal period from the date that the decision is mailed. Order. After the Planning Commission makes the decision, staff recommends that the Planning Commission direct staff to prepare an order that is signed by the chairperson of the Planning Commission. The order shall memorialize the decision and provide the official list of conditions, if any, that apply to the approval, if the application is approved. Motion. After opening the public hearing and receiving testimony, the Planning Commission options include the following. Move to approve application VR 21-01 and thereby permit the variance proposed at one lot east of 925 Long Street, Sweet Home, Oregon, 97386, identified on Lynn County Assessor's Map as 13S01E, 31AC, tax lot 11700, adopting the findings of fact listed in section 3 of the staff report, the setting of a 12-day appeal period from the date of the mailing of the decision, and hereby direct staff to prepare an order to be signed by the chair to memorialize this decision. Number 2, move to deny application VR 21-01 and thereby deny the request for a variance proposed at one lot east of 925 Long Street, Sweet Home, Oregon, 97386, identified on Lynn County Assessor's Map 13S01E, 31AC, tax lot 11700, adopting the following finding of fact, specify the setting of a 12-day appeal period from the date of the mailing of the decision, and hereby direct staff to prepare an order to be signed by the chair to memorialize this decision. Number 3, move to continue the public hearing to a date and time certain, specify, or for other. The fire chief is there if you have any questions for him, and so is staff engineer Graybill if there's any questions regarding those things.
All right, thank you, Angela. So at this time, we have our applicant at the table. If you could go ahead and state your name, address, and purpose of your application.
My name is Mark Lund, 631
17 Lake Point Way. Pretty much just gonna be moving forward 5 foot to make more room for a fire truck to get to the rear if needed. I am right beside the fire station, so it's a pretty safe spot as it is, but precisely it'd just be allowing for more space for a fire truck in the back of the property. It would shift the buildings forward 5 foot.
What is your intended use?
You're gonna do a 12-plex apartment buildings.
So residential.
Yeah.
Yeah, some of that was left off the map, and I don't know if that was intentional or just a slip up as far as labeling purpose of the property.
So I have a question. And so a 12-plex oriented to the long way of the property,
What's that?
it would be oriented toward the long way
Yeah,
of the
long way.
property.
Yep.
And the parking would be
In the rear.
in the rear.
It's only like it because of the easements. There's a sewer easement in the middle of the property. So by default, the buildings have to be in the front and the parking have to be in the back. Because there's a sewer easement down the middle, so you gotta put 2 buildings in the front rather than back. But you can't have the buildings on top of the easement, but you can parking spaces for it.
Oh, I see. So the middle, you mean horizontally through the middle, not lengthwise through
Yeah.
the middle.
Yep.
So this part right here, where
Right.
the sewer easement is,
Yeah. So there's gonna be a 6-plex in the front and then a 6-plex on the back side of it,
right there,
and then it'll be parking in the rear of it.
parking down.
But not,
50 making a 15-foot setback would pretty much shift the buildings forward 5 extra feet, then it will allow a little more room for a fire truck to get in the back.
I see, but not any parking between the buildings.
No. Oh, actually, no, I like, yeah, there's 2 handicap parking spaces, and then there's 2 other parking spaces. There's 12 units, there's gonna be 24 parking spaces.
Right, right.
And it looks like here on this map, there's no, on your actual layout for your property, it doesn't actually show the riparian zone, but it looks like basically the entire riparian zone is covered in a parking lot.
Yeah.
So Chairman, if you can see on there, there is this thing that says top of bank. That is showing where the top of bank for the riparian zone is.
That's
Where-
the start of the riparian zone.
Yeah, and anywhere, so they can't have buildings back there, but they can have, per code, it is approved to have parking back there.
So in the code, it states roadways and pathways. It doesn't actually state parking lot.
Yep.
Do any other commissioners have any questions for, continuing questions for applicant at this time?
No.
All right, thank you. If you would stick around, that would be great. We may need to call you back up. Is there anybody in the room wishing to speak in favor of this application? Okay, anyone wishing to speak in opposition? Okay. Go ahead and have a seat, and then state your name and address.
Hi, my name's Verlee Keekle. I live at 935 Long Street, Sweet Home, Oregon with my mother. We've owned that house since 1939. The riparian zone, it is totally, that's a very, very thin lot. And the riparian zone, it's crumbled down. I'm not really sure how we could take parking all the way up to the edge of that. I mean, you know, I really can't envision how that's not going to affect that part of the creek, because it's fairly natural all through there. All up behind, they've done a lot of work behind the fire station. It's gorgeous. But, and I just don't see how they could get a fire truck back in there anyway. how thin it is. It's a very thin lot. Like, we had to get a new bridge to be able to get the fire truck down our drive. I don't know. I'm not sure if it shows how thin that lot is. What is it, 35 feet, something like that? I don't know. But I do, without clarity, I'd like to know, like it will not look right. It will not be right. And I don't think it's when they put the riparian conditions in there is what they had in mind. I don't think it's what using this tiny slice of land to stick a 12-plex on and put a bunch of parking in the back. I don't know. But
So is your home the adjacent? This
right up, yes, right next to it, right across the creek. We own land next to the creek. That white house with the red
right
van,
there?
right, yeah.
Okay.
All right, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Do we have anybody else wishing to speak in opposition to this application? Anyone wishing to speak in neutral testimony, not in favor or against? Okay, at this time, I'll re-invite the applicant to come forward for your time of rebuttal to our opposition.
I spoke with, or I met with John, fire marshal, and we went over the requirements for a truck to get in and out of there. And we adjusted the building sizes to make a truck fit in there the way it should fit, essentially, dumb it down. But I was going back and forth for probably like 2 months, just trying to get the buildings the right size for the biggest truck can get back and out. So following code, it's how it should be.
So you did work with the fire department to come
Yeah.
up with something that will satisfy them? Okay.
I got a picture showing like how the fire truck.
Oh, we have that in our,
We
yeah,
do, yeah.
we do.
Yeah, he approved it essentially. He's kind of favor.
So do any of our commissioners have any further questions for the applicant? Thank you so much. All right, this time at 7:54, we're going to close the public hearing for discussion amongst the commission. Questions, thoughts? I'll throw mine out to start and I'll be the bad guy. We've kind of been thrown under the bus in the past for conditional use permits when people are just wanting them to want them.
You mean variances?
Variance, I'm sorry. So, I mean, this is a very flat, very buildable lot that seems like it just needs to find the right design to fit it the way it is. There's no huge topographical issues preventing the building from being put in a certain location. I see the setback as just a way to keep the building in front at 50 feet instead of having a 20-foot setback and making the building 45 feet. And I know that all of that falls in on floor planning and making the space work as far as a feasibility standpoint. But again, issuing variances just to issue a variance. It's kind of a thing we're trying to get out of. I appreciate the fact that they've done work to make it, allowances for the fire truck, but the whole point going in that this is to make it useful for the fire truck. I mean, yeah, it's great, but that's not the reason.
Is it typically a 0 front yard setback in commercial, which this would normally be? However, it is abutting a residential use. And
Yes.
so that's why we are requiring the 20-foot.
If it wasn't for the residential
Right.
use that borders on this property, it could have a 0 lot line
Yeah.
on the front.
Okay.
Chairman, one point in the previous variances that we've been trying to get away from, they haven't met the actual criteria for a variance. In that it hasn't been a natural condition that they're trying to address, or It's something that the applicant themselves caused. In this case, it's one of the few times where we've actually had a variance that meets the criteria in the code. So just wanted to make sure that was clear.
Criteria based on,
The riparian, the condition, the riparian zone and the rules we have on the riparian zone. That's not anything the applicant created, is what I'm saying, which is what previous variances, it was a condition where because of what the applicant was proposing, it just wouldn't
right,
fit. And that's
but if
why
this was a single sixplex, it would have ample room for parking. The fact that he's chosen to put 12 on it is a decision made by the applicant.
that's true, but it's a property that if it was situated anywhere else, it would fit that 12plex just fine, and nobody would have a problem with it.
But it's not.
Well, that's what I'm saying, is that's why it fits the criteria of a variance in the code. And that's not to suggest that you don't have any options. I'm just saying that it meets the requirement to come forward to you as something that could be approved. The other matter to consider is also regarding the parking lot and the comment on the parking lot. This variance is not whether or not that parking lot can be put in. This variance is whether or not the building can be moved forward 5 feet.
Right.
And so essentially the decision needs to be based solely on whether that's an appropriate thing to change,
Right.
because otherwise it's an outright permitted use to build an apartment complex in the C1 zone.
So, Blair, I guess I don't understand your comment about this meeting the definition of variance, because I don't understand that there is something particular about this property that requires a variance.
I'm not saying it does.
Yeah, so it's the contractor's choice to put in the type and size of building that he has indicated on the application, which is requiring him to ask for the variance. And that's not the kind of variance that we're wanting to grant, because it's his decisions that are causing the need.
So I guess I agree with you in that his decisions are causing the need there, but in his case, there's also other factors that are resulting in that. Like I said, if you take this property and you put it anywhere else in the C1 zone, where even if you just take away that one variable of the riparian zone, say you'd have a different lot that's similarly sized, similarly shaped, and it's adjoining a residential lot, if it has no riparian zone, he's got no problem. He could do this. In this case, through the natural layout of the land, I'm not saying that you have to agree with me. I'm just saying that this is one of the reasons why it's come forward to you rather than being just stopped at the door, like other variants.
Because of the riparian zone is the unique feature that requires the movement of the structures.
It changes his ability to use the property.
So if I can add to that, his original design wouldn't have had to come before you guys until he met with the fire chief, and they determined, so originally this would have went, because it's outright approved, it would have went straight into the building. However, it was the fire chiefs and their discussion about more room for the apparatus that actually is what prompted this. And so that is why it had to get moved. The buildings can't move back. So they had to move forward by 5 feet. And so it's actually the size of the fire apparatus turnaround that actually is what provoked this. Otherwise, this application wouldn't even be coming to the planning commission because it's outright permitted.
But that being said, if this was a single structure, say an 8plex, and that turnaround existed behind that, we also wouldn't need a variance.
True story.
So I guess my comment would be is that they probably purchased this lot with the intent and probably move forward with the purchase and design expense to put a 12plex on there. Everything was going through until they met with Dave. and that threw a big wrench in their plans. And I can imagine that it would be probably pretty costly to redraft and redesign, go through approvals again to get something to fit. And this seems like a pretty minor variance overall, as long as we've got some vision clearance there for people coming in and out of the parking lot for safety. If it was going to be there anyways, so, and we at least have a 15-foot instead of a 0 front setback. So I think it's well within our scope to be able to review and approve that.
No, not at this time, I'm sorry.
Chairman, can I make one more observation? Typically the intent of having a setback in a commercial zone, the commercial zone, this particular downtown C1 zone normally doesn't have a required front setback. When it's abutted by a residential zone is when it's required. Typically, that is when it's, next to that residential zone. And the intent is that you have kind of a transition from residential to commercial. In this case, the frontage on Long Street is commercial on either side. And so there's not actually a residential setback that it's transitioning from on Long Street. If you look at and the way you're looking at it makes me wonder if I'm totally off in left field. But yeah, there's a commercial. I'll share the screen again. My point was just to consider the frontage on Long Street, and that this area is what you're considering the transition, and what this setback. The point of a setback is for that appearance off of the street, right? And so that's what needs to be considered, whether it being 20 feet or 15 feet is adequate for the needs of that. And that's just what I'm trying to suggest that you take into account.
Right, but the property directly to the west is residential, that easement that goes back to
This one right
Nope.
here.
the
that's
sliver that
also
goes back to the
apartments.
lot.
This is apartments, right? Well, that's what I'm saying is it's not a single family home development, which is kind of the buffer that it's trying to move into. But there you go.
So I agree that the 5 feet maybe isn't so much, but it's the principle of the matter to me that's important, because that sets precedent for what comes before us in the future. And it also makes us reflect on decisions that we've made in the past. So it takes on a little bit more significance, because there is a historical context as well as a potential future context that we're creating.
That would be true with all variances though. And we do have the ability to grant variances if they make sense and if they are safe and necessary to do what could normally be done with a piece of property. But we've got some constraints here that are not imposed by the applicant. They are imposed by the fire department or the state with their riparian zone on this property.
I'd like to make some comments. Just some thoughts, but this is a C1 zone, and I think if we're going to change the use of the property from its existing zone, that becomes something we need to seriously consider. I don't like changing uses in zones very much. The other thought is that the Kekels live in an area where there's a riparian zone, which is kind of a natural area. And along with that, I guess I don't understand why we're putting a parking lot in a riparian zone.
Is that a question directed at staff?
I didn't hear you, I'm sorry.
Is that a question you would like staff to address?
In regards to the parking lot riparian.
Angela, could you speak to that?
Yeah, so in 1772-050 exceptions in the riparian zone, F, alteration of an area by placement of structures or impervious surfaces within a riparian zone upon demonstration that equal or better protection for identified resources will be ensured through restoration of riparian areas, enhanced buffer treatment, or similar measures, providing that the alterations not exceed 50% of the width of the riparian area measured from the upland edge of the zone. So typically parking lots are impervious surfaces, and you can add an additional condition of approval, or you can add a condition of approval for something that they, need to make sure that they ensure that the restoration, once they're done, buffers, you planning commissioners can add some additional language in there in regards to that. Excuse me.
However, we are not here to decide that tonight. We're just looking at a front yard setback. Correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Anybody have any other additional questions for staff? No one's anxious at this point to make a motion.
So I feel that the planning commission is the correct body to discern whether or not these variances make sense, and we do have that authority to grant these variances per our code. Therefore, I would make a motion to approve the application VR 21-01 to permit the variance proposed at 925 Long Street. Adopt the findings of facts.
Which one on the east of 925?
Set the 12-day appeal period from the date of the mailing of the decision and direct staff to prepare an order.
I'd second that.
We have a motion and a second. I'll turn it over to Angela for a roll call vote.
Okay, Commissioner Korn,
Yes.
Commissioner Journey,
Yes.
Commissioner Melcher,
Yes.
Chairman Parker,
No.
Commissioner Wolthius,
No.
and Commissioner Stevens.
Yes.
4 ayes, 2 nays, no absent, motion passes.
All right, we're going to be moving on to our next application. So at 8:10, we're going to open the public hearing in regards to application SD 21-01. The applicable substantive criteria are listed in the staff report. Testimony, arguments, and evidence must be directed toward the criteria described or other criteria in the plan or land use regulation, which the person believes to apply to the decision. Failure to raise an issue accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford the decision maker and the parties an opportunity to respond to the issue precludes the appeal to the Land Use Board of Appeals based on that issue. Application SD 21-01, the applicant is requesting to subdivide an approximately 6.5 acre property into 26 lots, ranging in size from approximately 8,226 to 9,950 square feet. The proposed subdivision's average lot size is approximately 8,932 square feet. Approximately 8,226 square feet shall be reserved for a stormwater detention area. The proposed subdivision is in the residential low-density R1 zone. So in regards to this application, do any of the commissioners have any personal bias?
No,
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 Any conflicts of interest?
no,
no.
no,
no,
Any ex parte information?
no.
No.
none.
All right. Angela, I will turn it over to you for our staff report.
All right, the subject property is located between 23rd Avenue and Foothills Drive, Sweet Home, Oregon 97386, identified on the Lynn County Assessor's Map as 13S 11E 32CA, tax lot 04403. Foothills Ridge subdivision will create 26 lots for single-family dwellings on 6.5 acres located on Lynn County Assessor's Map number 13S 01 East 32CA, tax lot 4403. Lots created by proposed subdivision will provide a variety of sizes. The smallest proposed lot is 8,226 square feet, while the largest lot is 9,950 square feet. The proposed subdivision's average lot size is 8,932 square feet. The proposed subdivision conforms to all applicable sections of Sweet Home Municipal Code, Sweet Home, and when necessary, City of Sweet Home's comprehensive plan. This application narrative provides findings of fact that demonstrate conformance with the applicable sections of Sweet Home Municipal Code. Pardon me, I think I'm losing my voice. The subject property is accessed via Foothills Drive and 23rd Avenue. Foothills Drive is a paved road, has one lane in each direction, and is constructed to urban local road standards. 23rd Avenue is an unimproved gravel road with one lane in each direction. City of Sweet Home is the road authority for the two roads. The subject property is surrounded by single-family dwellings north, east, and west, and timberland to the south. Based on the review of the FEMA firm maps, the subject property is located outside the 100-year floodplain and in an area of minimal flood hazard. The subject property does not contain wetlands that are inventoried on the Sweet Home Local Wetlands Inventory or the National Wetlands Inventory NWI map. The subject property has access and city water and sewer services from the Foothills Drive and 23rd Avenue. Based on a review of the applicant's site plan and the applicant's residential subdivision application, lot depth would not exceed 2.5 times the average width. There is a portion of each lot where the front building line would be at least 80 feet in width for an interior lot and 70 feet in width for a corner lot. No lot would be dimensioned to contain part of any existing or proposed street. I did find a correction to page 6. It states currently it states every lot shall abut a street other than an alley for a width of at least 25 feet. Sweet Home Municipal Code 17081010C. Based on a review of applicant site plans, the proposed lots would have 25 feet of frontage along Foothills Drive. I needed to correct that because the rear lots on the south side of Foothills have a total of 24-foot easement, 12 feet on each side. Per code, there needs to be 25 feet. So I wanted to enter that into record. Per the staff engineer's comments in section 2, the city of Sweet Home wants to have provision for a water line easement in the common driveway. In the common driveway are serving lots 24 and 25 on lots 10 and 11. The easement would be the same size as the proposed shared utility and access easements as noted on the plan option B. The easement would run from the south right-of-way line of Foothills Drive to the south lines of lot 24 and 25. It has access from Ames Creek Road so that the only water line would be connected through the lots. The development will need to link the proposed water system on Foothills Drive to Harding Street. 23rd Avenue had a very small water line that was inadequate to connect to. The city has placed 250 feet of 6-inch water line in 23rd Avenue from Harding Street, 6-inch water line southward a few feet from the drainage channel culvert. The city has done this work for our own distribution system needs. Developer would have had to do this otherwise. The proposed subdivision shall connect to a new endpoint now with a crossing under the channel. The channel culvert currently has 6 to 8 inch of cover. Because of the limited width of 23rd Avenue and the potential awkward connection to the adjacent drainage channel, if it was done in the roadway, the outlet from the detention basin is shown to connect to that channel on the property of Lot 1, which is at 751 23rd Avenue. An easement will be necessary on that property if there is not one currently available. The tentative plan does not show how the development will accommodate runoff from the south hillside. There will need to be an easement channel an easement channel, area catch basins, or some combination of those along the south line of the properties. That stormwater connection will then be another pipeline in the shared driveway easement down the driveway to Foothills Drive. The southern properties are about 12 feet to 15 feet above the central flat portion of the development. The plan indicates a curb and sidewalk along the east side of 23rd Avenue. That would be a half street, which is really a 3/4 street on the ground, comprised of sidewalks, curb and drainage, pavement to the center line, and the opposite line. There will need to be a curb on that side too, because residents will travel to and from the subdivision in both directions on 23rd Avenue. Because of the very poor condition of 23rd Avenue and it being the most direct path westward to the community, the improvements on 23rd Avenue need to extend to Harding Street. The city may be able to partner with the developer to improve the street network at 23rd Avenue and Harding Street. The city is currently looking to overlay both streets, so by the time this proposed subdivision starts construction, there may already be a good pavement in portions of 23rd Avenue and Harding Street. The indicated proposed mainline sewer system appears to be able to provide each lot with a service. For the properties on the south boundary that appear to be sharing the driveway accesses, each lot will have its own sewer lateral line. The applicant has not proposed a joint use driveway. The staff engineer is present if the commissioners have questions about any of this after my summary. The applicant has not proposed any through lots. The proposed parcels would have sidelines that are at or very close to right angles to Foothill Drive. The applicant is not proposing any flag lots, and the applicant has not proposed any special setbacks. The applicant is proposing to create 26 residential lots, 1 open space tract, and an extension of Foothills Drive and associated utilities. As reviewed in the staff report, the lots would meet the minimum lot size of the zone and would be configured so that they could accommodate a residential dwelling. Staff finds that the applicant does not own any other property adjacent to the site. Staff has not identified any feature of the proposed subdivision that would inhibit development on adjoining properties. Per the staff engineer's comments in section 2, the transportation system plan, TSP, roadway dimensions require a minimum 3-foot planter strip for local streets, which the narrative and plan do not show. Foothills Drive is wide enough for planter strips to be constructed and are required. The proposal shows a 50-foot right-of-way, which provides adequate width for 5-foot sidewalk, 4-foot planter, and 30-foot curb-to-curb widths, which provides the minimum 7-foot parking and travel lane, etc. The fire and ambulance district is requiring that the northeast corner of Foothills Drive and 23rd Avenue be a rounded corner with a 20-foot radius to facilitate turning of large vehicles. The properties of the south boundary accessed by easement do not indicate if the front residents will or will not connect to the shared driveways. If they do, then each driveway will have 4 residents, lessening the number of driveway aprons to the Foothills Drive itself. However, it may create some issues with emergency services and access to those residences. The intersection of Foothills Drive and 23rd Avenue will require a street name sign and post installed. A stop sign will not be necessary. Not every local street intersection needs a stop control condition. State of Oregon traffic rules provide guidance to drivers on the general right-of-way use at T and cross intersections. The plan indicates a curb and sidewalk along the east side of 23rd Avenue. That would be a half street comprised of sidewalk, curb and drainage, pavement to the center line and opposite lane. There will need to be a curb on that side because residents will travel to and from the subdivision in both directions. Relevant to the street standards 27th, excuse me, sorry. Relevant to the street standards, 27th Avenue is a 40-foot right-of-way, 28th Avenue is a 50-foot right-of-way, 29th Avenue is a 60-foot right-of-way, Mountain View is a 40-foot right-of-way, and Harding Street is a 40-foot right-of-way, just for some examples. The staff engineer and the Sweet Home Fire District are present if the commissioners have questions after my summary. Per the staff engineer's comments in section 2, the city of Sweet Home wants to have provisions for water line easement in the common driveway or serving lots 24 and 25 on lots 10 and 11. The easement would be the same size as the proposed shared utility access easements as noted on Plan Option B. The easement would run from the south right-of-way line of Foothills Drive to the south line of lots 24 and 25. The city is looking forward 15 to 20 years for a need for an additional water reservoir in the area, with the adjacent property to the south at the right elevation and location, and has access from Ames Creek Road, so that only a water line would be connected through the lots. We would likely place a conduit in the ground at the time of the construction to feed the future water line through, without the need for excavation at the future time. This development will need to link to the proposed water system on Foothills Drive to Harding Street, 23rd Avenue, have a very small water line that was inadequate to connect with. The city has placed a 250-foot 6-inch water line in 23rd Avenue from Harding Street, 6-inch water line southward a few feet from the drainage channel culvert. The Proposed subdivision shall connect at the new endpoint now with a crossing under the channel. The channel culvert currently has 6 to 8 inches of cover. The indicated proposed mainline sewer system appears to be able to provide each lot with service. For the properties on the south boundary that appear to be sharing the driveway accesses, each lot will have its own sewer lateral line. Excuse me. The staff engineer will be present if the commissioners have any questions regarding this. Staff has not identified any special features of the site. The applicant is not proposing to develop the property in phases. The city has not been informed by the Sweet Home School District that their adopted school facility plan has identified a lack of school capacity. Staff does not recommend that this application be denied based on lack of school capacity. This applicant is requesting to subdivide the approximately 6.5 acre property into 26 lots, ranging from approximately 8,226 to approximately 9,950 square feet. To ensure compliance, staff recommends a condition of approval that upon development of the proposed parcels, the property owner shall construct all applicable street, sidewalk, and storm drain improvements that are required by and according to the provisions of the Sweet Home Municipal Code at the time of development. All public improvements must comply with the standards listed in the Sweet Home Municipal Code at the time of development. Staff has recommended conditions of approval listed in section 4 below that act to ensure the final subdivision plat comply with the application that has been proposed. Additional conditions of approval may be required if any of the subject parcels are further divided under a future application or if they are physically developed by residents. I'm now going to address public comments and concerns. However, full comments were provided in your packet, so I will only address the concerns relating directly to criteria. The rest you can read the letters that were provided in your packets for the remainder of them. There was concern about extra traffic on Foothills Drive and 23rd Avenue. I will direct the answer to that to our engineering staff. There were questions whether 23rd Avenue and Harding Street will be improved to accommodate extra traffic. Again, I will confer to engineering. Concerned about road widths and access, fire and life safety for emergency vehicles to access the houses at the south end of Foothills Drive via access easements. How emergency vehicles access the subdivision through Foothills Drive or 23rd. I'm going to defer to engineering and the fire district. There was concerns about being a wetland. It is not listed on the FEMA map or the Sweet Home Wetlands Inventory map as a wetland. There was concern about water detention area increasing flooding. I'm going to defer to engineering. Concerns about protected flora and fauna of the property. It is a private property and not deemed a natural resource overlay zone or a protected site for flora and fauna. There were concerns that the subdivision doesn't look like the surrounding neighborhood and it will decrease the value of homes in the area. There is not evidence that the subdivision will decrease the values of homes in the area. There are concerns about parking on the easements. There's no parking allowed on access easements. The property owners are required to have a garage or carport and 2 off-street parking spaces. The recommended conditions of approval are as follows. Number 1, the final configuration of the proposed lot shall substantially conform to the plot plan reviewed in this application. The final configuration is to subdivide an approximately 6.5 acre property into 26 lots ranging from approximately 8,226 to approximately 9,950 square feet. The proposed subdivision's average lot size is approximately 8,932 square feet. Approximately 8,226 square feet shall be reserved for a stormwater detention area. Approximately 4,373 square feet shall be dedicated as public right-of-way for an extension of Foothills Drive to serve the proposed subdivision. The applicant shall provide a water line easement through lots 10, 11, 24, and 25 in the common driveway that serves lots 24 and 25. The easement will be the same size as the proposed shared utility access easement as noted on the attached site plan. The easement would run from the south right-of-way of Foothills Drive to the south lines of lots 24 and 25. The applicant shall link the proposed water system on Foothills Drive to Harding Street. The proposed subdivision shall connect the new 6-inch water line endpoint with a crossing under the channel. The channel culvert currently has a 6 to 8 inch of cover. The applicant shall install a street sign at the intersection of Foothills Drive and 23rd Avenue. The stormwater basin shall remain under private ownership and not be transferred to the city of Sweet Home. The maintenance of this private stormwater basin is up to the local residents with or without an HOA. The applicant shall provide an easement on adjacent lot 1, 751 23rd Avenue to provide a connection to the stormwater detention area. The applicant shall provide stormwater collection easement along lots 18 through 25 to accommodate the runoff from the south hillside. The stormwater collection will be through the utility easement to Foothills Drive. On 23rd Avenue, the applicant shall develop half street improvements on the ground comprised of sidewalk, curb, and drainage, pavement to the center line, and opposite lane. The improvements on 23rd Avenue need to extend to Harding Street. The applicant shall provide each lot with its own sewer lateral line. Within 1 year from the date of approval of the tentative plan, the applicant shall prepare a final plat in conformance with the approved tentative plan, the provisions of this title, and the provisions of ORS Chapter 92. The applicant shall submit a final subdivision plat for approval by the city according to the procedures and requirements of Sweet Home Municipal Code 16.20. The applicant shall provide all information required by Sweet Home Municipal Code 16.20. Improvements within the subdivision shall be installed at the expense of the subdivider as required by Sweet Home Municipal Code 16.24.050. Improvements shall be made under the procedures and specifications listed in Sweet Home Municipal Code Chapter 16.24. The applicant shall obtain all applicable development permits, which include but are not limited to public works permits, development permits, including building permits and erosion control permits. The applicant shall obtain a 1200C stormwater permit from the Oregon Department of Environmental Quality and any Department of State Lands permits as applicable. Planning Commission action. In taking action on the subdivision, the Planning Commission will hold a public hearing at which it may either approve or deny the application. The decision on the application must be based on the applicable review and design criteria. If approved, the Planning Commission may impose conditions of approval. Staff's recommended conditions are included in Section 4. Appeal period. Staff recommends that the Planning Commission decision on this matter be subject to a 12-day appeal period from the date that the notice of decision is mailed. Order. After the Planning Commission makes a decision, staff recommends that the Planning Commission direct staff to prepare an order that is signed by the chairperson of the Planning Commission. The order would memorialize the decision and provide the official list of conditions, if any, that apply to the approval if the application is approved. Motion. After opening the public hearing and receiving testimony, the Planning Commission options include the following. Move to approve application SD 21-01, including the conditions of approval listed in Section 4 of the staff report, adopting the findings of fact listed in Section 3 of the staff report, the setting of a 12-day appeal period from the date of the mailing of the decision, and hereby direct staff to prepare an order to be signed by the chair to memorialize this decision. 2, move to deny application SD 21-01, including adopting findings, specify the finding and the setting of a 12-day appeal period from the date of mailing of the decision, and hereby direct staff to prepare an order to be signed by the chair to memorialize this decision. 3, move to continue public hearing to date and time, or 4, other. I'm done.
Thank you. You deserve a drink of water.
Thank you.
Yeah. So at this time, I'd like to invite our applicant to come forward. And after you have a seat, if you could state your name and address and purpose of the
My
application.
name is Saziakis. I'm 13517 Portland Road, Woodland, Oregon. And I own the property and I'm just looking to see what it will take to bring up this proposal.
Okay. Do any of the commissioners have any questions for our applicant?
Do you intend to, if it is approved, to go through with the subdivision and then sell the subdivision, sell individual lots, develop them yourself? Okay.
Oh, Mike.
Sorry. Did you consider shared driveways? And if so, why or why not?
To maximize the space of in the backside there we did. Actually, they're all going to be individuals. If I remember right, they're all going to be individual driveways.
Right, and I'm asking, so they're going to be individual curb cuts for each 2 sets of houses. And I'm wondering how much more space it would have taken to have a shared driveway. Because I'm looking at this as a neighborhood, not just a development. The staff report stated that no parking is allowed on the easements. So if you have a home with 2 parking spaces, people are going to be parking on the street. 26 houses times 2 is a minimum of 52 cars in and out every day, plus. So I'm just concerned about both ingress and egress with cars.
Eva, is your mic on?
Yes.
I can't hear her either.
Oh,
Oh, maybe the battery died.
okay. Oh, that sounds a lot louder. So if you could just talk a little bit more about your decision to not have a shared driveway in that regard.
Well, we're honestly just in the design stage and we're not sure. I mean, we're open to whatever is suggested and whatever makes more sense. I could definitely talk with my engineers and see whatever the city prefers, we could try and accommodate that.
So that's good to hear because otherwise we would be approving something that you may or may not actually have your heart into or your ideas
Okay.
into. So I'd like to put that on the table as a consideration.
So Commissioner Journey, can I add to that?
Sure.
One of the conversations that I had with the applicant was the option, the easement option because of the frontages. If you did a flag lot, you would lose the frontage and they wouldn't be able to build. And so in order to keep the frontages, there had to be the easements there. So it is up to you guys how they do that. But that was one of the discussions we had, were there options. They couldn't do flag lots. Shared driveways, they could do a shared driveway, but they both have to, they would lose the frontage. So it all depends on how it would be configured, whether they could do that easement. They wouldn't lose any of their square footage and they wouldn't lose their frontage, which was the reason why that they chose to do the easement. So just per my conversation with them, what their decisions are, it'll be up to you guys and them to decide that. But I just wanted to let you know what the conversation was.
Well, and we've had a conversation like this with another developer in the past where there were some buildings that were planned with individual driveways and the shared driveway, etc.
Your mic's off. There you go.
Am I on? This is certainly the broader picture, but I've been around long enough that I remember conversations in years past that Foothills Drive would connect with Mountain View. And I just wonder if you've taken the bigger picture and maybe considered talking to other property owners to see if Foothills Drive might go all the way through.
I'm not sure, we haven't gotten that far yet.
Looks like we might have to bulldoze some people's homes if we're planning to do that. Is that what I'm seeing?
No, Foothills Drive could come right down here and connect up with Mountain View. And that's been a conversation in years past, is that we pick up at the dead end and end up at Mountain View, and then you'd have collector streets. But I know that that's a much bigger project.
Correct.
And that could redesign some of your lots too.
Is that in our current TSP? Do we know?
Jill, can you chime in on that? Turn your mic on.
Now, frankly, I do not remember if the extension there is in the TSP. I do not believe it is. I could check that easily enough, but I don't believe it is to go through there. When it was originally initiated back in 1980 or thereabouts, that predated a whole bunch of other land use controls. So they may have desired something like that, but it wasn't in the TSP that I've seen recently. But I'll check.
Anybody else have
You're
it?
gonna have fences on between the houses?
If necessary, yeah.
You're not scheduled to do them unless we require you to do them. Is that what you're saying?
I am not honestly sure with what the engineer drew up or what he proposed. I own the property. I was actually not involved in the whole design thing, so I apologize. The fellow that I'm working with is on vacation, so he couldn't make it today, so I'll do my best.
Excuse me, commissioners. I'm looking at the TSB from 2004. The road network of Foothills Drive extended only over to 23rd Avenue. The extension at the east end of Foothills is a pedestrian bicycle path through the Hobart Wildland Preserve, but there is no intent to connect to Mountain View Road with a roadway network.
Well, coming back to 23rd, sometimes we need to get the city a little more involved. And because that's a narrow road and a pretty inadequate road, to take a look and see if it could be widened and be more of a connector street.
So
Sometimes when we piecemeal these things, we end up with things that we live with forever and ever after. Excuse me for bringing up other examples, but at the extreme south end of 12th Avenue is an intersection that has never been finished. Because either we didn't work with a contractor or the city was unwilling to get involved and spend some taxpayer dollars. But there's two roads that come like this and it's never been finished. And I think of cases like that where I don't know what funds the city has, but it may be that, you know, we could establish some nexus, make some cooperation with the city and somehow or other expand 23rd where it would be more of a useful road, because this is a lot of homes without a lot of collector streets going to it.
So one thing I can tell you, Commissioner, there is a partition for a property on 23rd that has been applied for and is sitting on our desks waiting for approval. And that partition would result in an extra 5 feet being added to 23rd, which would make it possible, make it so that it's 40 feet wide for most of it. And then that would be one more property that we would be trying to contact to see if we could get an extra 5 feet from them, which would make it 40 feet the entire way, which brings it, didn't you say that Mountain View's right of way is 40 feet, Angela, in the report?
Yes,
So
Joe, yeah, that was Joe's comments, but
Right.
I have to sort back through. Hold on,
Right,
give
so
me one.
that brings it into line with, I mean, I'm not saying it is as large as we would want it to be, but it brings it in line with a major street in the area. And keep in mind that what we see on the ground is not always the right of way. Often what the street appears to be is actually smaller than what the whole right of way is if we actually pave the whole right of way. So I believe that it's reasonable to think that we could get to 40 feet wide fairly easily on 23rd. And Joe, if you
Yes.
have anything to add on that, you can.
And yes, the statement, which I did get from Joe, is Mountain View is a 40-foot right of way. So
Right, and I do agree that, and I'm a big advocate of sharing for the improvement of the whole neighborhoods, partnering with developers to do that kind of thing. And I agree. I think it would be fairly easy on a scale of 1 to 10, about a 7 or an 8, to get or to ask for the extra 5 feet on the southeast corner of 23rd Avenue and Harding, so that the total right of way would be 40 feet wide And within 40 feet, you can place a fairly standard, those small local street, according to our standards in the TSB. It is pretty difficult to squeeze that into something that's 35 feet and provide enough pedestrian access. And if you're stuck down to 30, which it was not too long ago in terms of months, that you would be pretty much limited to a roadway with painted curbs and signed no parking and just one single side sidewalk, as basically a fire lane access, but no parking on.
So Joe, you, as part of this development, are going to be requiring the developer with maybe some participation from the city to improve 23rd with sidewalk and curb gutter.
Yes. The reason being that while Foothills Drive is is really nice, the opposite end of a 25 unit subdivision is just a gravel road. They would be required to make improvements there. And yes, it is an offsite improvement beyond the perimeter of the subdivision, but I believe that there's good justifiable nexus, if you will, or coordinated link to at least get to the Harding Street intersection. Around the corner from Harding over to Mountain View Road, that's on us, that's on the city for improvements. But to get to that intersection at least is a reasonable expectation, in my view.
And I also want to confirm that the current residents of 23rd that are abutting 23rd Avenue will not be required to participate in any expense of improving their street.
Well, typically when it comes to a development such as this, it's on the developer that needs that construction. There may be some other complications or other options. Those decisions happen at higher pay grades than mine. However, I'm pretty optimistic about the other property owners that are beyond the need of any expansion of the roadway onto their property. They are generally not involved financially. And it's a coordinated fashion of what we could do with the one corner property. It remains to be seen, but it's a possibility, I think.
You were didn't you say something about a 3/4 street when you were talking before about this?
Yes. The 3/4 street is basically the in and out paving lanes and the curb and gutter just along the opposite side. This development is on the east side of 23rd Avenue. On the east side should be the pedestrian link to Harding Street. The west side properties are uninvolved. They're spectators to the entire thing. The development is driving both lanes of work. It's up to the property owners to want or not want the sidewalk opposite this development. So it's a half street development is a nominal term, and the reality can be anywhere from a 1/4 street to a half to a 3/4 street in the practical reality on the ground.
In 3/4 street, you're mainly just saying that next to the stormwater detention area to the east, it would be curb and gutter and sidewalk, and then the street would be paved, and that would be the 3/4 portion.
Correct. Yes, that area and across the center line. Basically, you've got to have 2 lanes in both directions when you're on such a narrow and undeveloped street as this is.
2 lanes of paved traffic, curb and gutter and sidewalk.
Correct. Yeah.
All right, do any of our commissioners have any further questions for the applicant at this time? do hang out. We'll have time for rebuttal. Again, I will remind everybody in the audience that wishes to speak that obviously we have a few people here, so we want to keep our testimony as concise as possible. If somebody prior to you addresses your same issue, go ahead and come up and just state your name and address and that you agree with the previous person, and then we'll continue on. So at this time, I'm gonna invite anybody that's a proponent. So anybody wishing to speak in favor of the application to come forward at this time. All right. Anybody in opposition, wishing to speak in opposition of the application. Okay, I got one hand right here. Okay. After you have a seat, state your name and address.
My name is Chris Johnson, 759 27th Avenue. And I did submit a letter for the record from my wife and I.
Okay.
Basically, my concern is fire and life safety, the traffic issue, and just community continuity that we have in the area. I got 23 years in fire and EMS. Did work for the Sweet Home Fire and Ambulance District until 2007, until I moved on to another municipality. But my concern is basically that emergency access. I live at the intersection of Harding and 27th. And I actually had I experienced a fire at my house and saw the difficulty of fire apparatus making that turn off of Harding onto 27th, which is a narrow road. 23rd is an even narrower road to make access. And you kind of made mention to Mountain View being a nice, easy access road and the width being, 40 feet. But if you look at the access coming off of 18th, 22nd, and Long Street for fire and EMS to make those turns, it's a lot easier for them to access that because you're going from a wider street down to a narrow street. But if you're coming from Harding Street, which is narrow, onto 23rd or 27th, both those are very narrow roads. And I've watched the fire department try and make those turns with their truck, which is over 50 feet, and they have to jockey. So you can't expect first responders to adapt to all these different variances that you guys or decisions that you'll make for different developments on how they're going to respond in an emergency. You know, you want the shortest, the quickest route to an emergency. So you can't expect them to drive down Long Street to 29th to Foothills and come in from another direction. Traffic, that kind of addresses the traffic situation as well, because narrow roads, you got to stop, let another car pass you when there's vehicles parked on the road or on the side of the road. So traffic is another concern, but the other thing is just the community continuity. Whether you call it an easement, quasi flag lot, we don't really have those kind of developments anywhere in our neighborhood. If you look at the development phase 1 and 2, and now this is kind of phase 3, but there's nothing in the area has that kind of continuity. And there's actually, I don't think anything, at least on the south side of Highway 20, that has any kind of development like that. So you guys kind of made mention earlier, that 925 Long Street development and the 5973 Nandina Street, where you have these variants, quasi, you adapted the code, and now they come to haunt you. You guys won't be here for them to haunt the people, for the commissioners down the road, but I just ask you to look long and hard at these decisions and how they affect not only the homes that are, and the residents that are currently there, but how they're going to develop or how they're going to affect everybody in the future, let alone, God forbid, you have some kind of a medical emergency or fire. So those are my concerns. I just want to voice those.
Thank you so much for your time.
My name is Jeff Sims. I live at 2720 Foothills Drive. I'm just right down the street from where this is going to happen. I agree with Chris on everything he had to say, and I'd like to add that the easement driveway situation creates ambiguity to who owns and maintains that area, and can lead to a lack of maintenance and an unkempt look. And drive property values down.
Thank you so much.
Gail, can I take this off?
Yes, you may.
Thanks. Irritating. Gail Heine, 2331 Harding Street. I wrote a letter. I just really have to emphasize flooding. I flooded all the way to my house in December. The people from phase 1 and 2 and Foothills Drive were not there when I purchased a house. Their homes were built on a wetland, which is designated on the map. And in the back of my house is a ditch that's supposed to drain that wetland. Well, now with all that compaction, the 6+ acres gets full of water. My property, along with neighbors, gets full of water. I don't know if a retention thing or whatever you guys are, I'm not an engineer. It's a lot of water. And all we have around is clay soil. So that doesn't absorb water. So I don't like the idea. Thank you.
Get that off so I can talk. My name's Ron Walker. I live at 2631 Foothills Drive, which is directly adjacent to the proposed subdivision. I did write a letter, and I am the one that did a little due diligence because I was informed that we didn't have, my biggest concern, I guess, is the easements. And so I'm going to direct that because everybody else has kind of addressed everything else that I have concerns. The easement thing really bothers me. Staff has informed me that we didn't have any such type of a situation within our city limits at this point in time. So I took it upon myself to go to the neighboring town of Lebanon, who has some, and my pictures that are attached to my letter show those. The first one is approximately the same width as the proposed easements in this subdivision. And you can see what kind of problems that we are going to be faced with that. The easement thing itself, the lots to the far south, the 8 lots in the back far south, need those easements to gain access. They get those easements by borrowing property from the front property owners, which I think is absolutely insane. I feel that with a little re-engineering and maybe another draft of that subdivision, that many problems could be solved as far as traffic and easements and civil problems with neighbors that are sharing easements that have to work things out. I guess what I'm saying is, since we don't have these things in our town, that you folks are tasked with setting a precedent here, and I'm not real sure that this is the kind of precedents that our town wants to set. Obviously, I'm very much against the easements. Mr. Johnson addressed several fire and life safety issues. I'm a 24-year retired fire captain. My job towards the end was training for fire marshal. Injury precluded that, but in our department, a situation like this, we had a rubber stamp that goes, try again. Never would it be allowed in our department. I don't think the chief can get his engine or truck down those easements because of the 24-foot width. We've already addressed that on the 23rd Avenue situation. So anyway, I have a real problem with it. I tried to dissect your ordinances and I was mistaken. Angela directed me from the easement section. There's nothing in the easement section that addresses the situation that we're facing here. But she directed me to another section called lots and parcels, which addresses in section F, access easements. It says no other practical access to lots or parcels exist. The city may allow an access easement for access to the larger parcel. It's a blank canvas right now. So I don't see where that applies either. A little adjustment of the lots. There's some suggestions in my letter. I hope you folks read those, and the access to those rear homes are the southernmost homes in the second layer of the residence there, I think is absolutely absurd. And I would like to go on record as strongly objecting to that particular scenario.
Right.
As far as the rest of the traffic and everybody else's concerns have pretty much been addressed. That's the main one that I have, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Mr. Walker,
Yes, ma'am.
could I just ask you one question? You
Absolutely.
mentioned that you had went over to Lebanon.
I
and
did.
Checked out theirs.
Yes.
Did you happen to go down South Main Road to Heather Estates subdivision? It's probably one of the most popular subdivisions in Lebanon off Jaden Drive.
I did not. I
They've
went
got
to the
some
planning commission there and showed them our plot plan and asked if there were any of those types of scenarios in their city, and the gal directed me down Walker Road. On the north side, I believe it would be, of Walker Road
Mhm.
is where some of those pictures were taken.
Yeah, Keith
And-
Street, Antioch. Does that sound right?
Yes, ma'am.
Uh-huh.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
That is it.
Yeah.
And also, if you go farther south on Walker Road, you run into Stoltz Hill.
Yep.
And if you turn right, that would be north, I guess. I'm a little mixed up
Uh-huh.
over there. There are some instances of those in there. But the one that struck me was the first picture in my packet
Mhm.
that it's like, I hope we don't go there.
So Jaden Drive is where they have done it very nicely done with those flag lots that have the homes back behind. It's one of the more popular developments, and as far as resale, those home values are very high in there.
I'm familiar with the area. I looked at it many years ago. But you're talking a flag lot scenario there, and that's not what we're doing here.
The shared drive is what I'm referring to.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, shared drive as a,
Easement or flag, either. It's just
yeah,
the shared
I
drive.
guess I have a problem with it, with the front lots on Foothills Drive sharing, having to give up their property to satisfy the people in the back.
Yeah.
I have a real issue with that. And I have a real issue with access for fire equipment,
Mhm.
garbage trucks, whatever, large equipment. I just think it's crazy. But I hope we don't go that way.
Yeah.
Um,
If you get a
whatever-
chance, take a peek at Jaden Drive
I
because it
shall.
looks really
I shall.
nice.
Like I say, I
And I think we could have a potential to do something like that, at least here, if we.
well, I think we have other alternatives here, and even our developer has indicated that he's flexible to do
Yeah.
some things, and I hope that he kind of takes into consideration the concerns of the existing neighborhood. We live in a pretty decent neighborhood for our city, and we'd kind of like to keep it that way. And I kind of feel like we're trying to put 10 gallons of stuff in a 5-gallon bucket, I guess. if we'd lighten up on the amount of lots back there and widen out some access, I think would be awesome. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there anybody else in our audience that would like to come forward and speak against this application? All right, at this time, is there any neutral testimony wishing to speak not in favor or against? No? All right, at this time, I will invite our applicant to come back forward to answer some of the questions and concerns that were voiced by our citizens.
Well, I want to be sensitive to their,
Can you push your button and see if that'll light?
Oh, it's on.
It's on, it's on. Just get a little closer. There you go.
so I do want to be sensitive to what they're suggesting, and, you know, like I said, we are open to whatever accommodations. I mean, it has to be within reasonable cost, obviously, you know, we also gotta make the numbers work as well, you know, so like I said, whatever we need to do, so we're open to it.
Any of the commissioners have any other questions for our applicant while he's up here right now?
No, but I have some suggestions.
Okay.
You might want to talk to other property owners. Excuse me.
It was on.
You want to talk to other property owners or other designs?
You turned your mic off.
Other possibilities that should be done. Particularly if you wanted to continue westward to Mountain View Road. Looks like there's 3 lots, 3 people you need to talk to, and you can put that road all the way through.
Okay.
Just a thought. But we're making major decisions in an hour or two.
Correct.
When, you know, this thing probably should be massaged a little more.
Can I ask a question?
Oh,
Are you
yes.
through,
go ahead.
Henry?
Yes.
So would you be willing to reconfigure some of these lots so we don't have these shared driveways?
Is that for me?
Yeah.
Are you talking
Yeah.
to me or are you?
No, I'm talking to the applicant.
I believe so. I would have to talk to my engineer and see if we can, if you guys would like a redesign of what you guys would like to see, and see how we can make that fit.
Thank you.
I think being open to possibilities of redesign and incorporating some of the elements and addressing some of the issues that obviously you've heard here tonight would go a long way. I think it would go a long way in helping your lots be sold. I do understand, coming from a construction contractor background, that there does have to be a certain number of lots to make everything pencil out, make the whole project viable. I do get that. But again, this is something I know that has been done in other places well, but we're very gun shy of something new and different. I don't live in the Foothills subdivision area, but I have people that live in there, friends, family. So I do get what they're trying to protect as far as that environment. I noticed that on the junction of Foothills where you would add to it, it chokes down from a 60-foot to a 50-foot. Yes, a 50-foot meets requirements, but we have spots all over town that are speckled with street shifts and changes and misalignments, and it just kind of speaks to poor planning, I think, on our part as city officials. So I think all of us are interested in trying to iron out stuff like that so that we don't get saddled with it. Obviously, there's decisions all over town that have been poorly made or made off the cuff. And again, I do applaud you for for being willing to change. I know the addition of the radius corner between Foothills and 23rd will greatly help the fire department, and your willingness to do that speaks volumes. So, yeah. Does anybody else have any questions they'd like to ask before we? Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
All right, we are going to close the public hearing at 9:06 for discussion amongst the commission. No, it doesn't matter. I mean, I'll go first. I think the idea of a subdivision there is going to happen one way or another. But it's obvious that maybe this is a first draft. Addressing some of the issues for fire, life, health and safety. As far as the radius on there, I'd like to see that on the drawing. I would really like to see the transition between the existing foothills and the new foothills be more seamless. I know Henry's concern with foothills connecting at some point to Mountain View, while valid, isn't unfortunately super practical. Although there could be provisions at some point for a footpath to connect the subdivision to Mountain View, although I don't know how Mountain View would handle that foot traffic. There's kind of a iffy vision area right there on that road. So,
Chair Parker,
yes, sir.
I just wanted to make sure you're aware that Chief Behringer from the Fire District is here to answer any questions regarding fire life safety that you might have and any concerns he can address as well as you.
Well, I'll throw that one right to you then. So as far as the 50-foot right of way, I know that can be a bit of a pinch with parking on both sides. And probably closer down to the 23rd intersection, there might need to be no parking on one side just to help as far as swing, getting the engine through there. I mean, what are your, as truck driver, fire truck driver, what do you see that turn looking like? I mean, cars on the road, not on the road, no parking, one side, both sides.
Are you referring to 23rd and
Correct.
Foothills or the future Foothills?
Correct.
There's concern, obviously with width of 23rd and what it currently, that would be our most likely our access. That's what we would look at, map, and say that's what we should access it with instead of coming in a different way. Well, that would be from the main station and from our Crawford station. That's where they would get. So that width, parking being there, it's the first time I heard the 3/4 street idea. The fact that it could be 40 feet wide would really make a big difference. So that in theory is not bad to me. I think that could be resolved. The developer's willingness to cut that corner there a little bit helps us to depart from that area. I think that's also a point that I like. And then you spoke to the continuity of dropping down to a choke point. We're going to have apparatus responding from Foster and from Cascadia to that area, and they would come in from the other direction, and that would be a concern for them. Just that has a really strange feel to it, and it's meaning people are paying really close attention when they're looking at a fire when the lights and sirens are going, and that creates a concern for me. Obviously 50 feet is wide enough, so that's not my concern. It's just that transition is a concern.
From the visual aspect.
Yeah, it's just from a driving aspect, cars parking, things being in the way, and all of a sudden you've narrowed down. So that's not what necessarily a driver is expecting.
What about accessing the rear lots?
That's really a concern. Obviously, so I'm looking at some of the pictures that the gentleman had taken from Lebanon, and if some of those had some walls up and some shrubs up, and so as you start getting into some of that, you're going to really create access problems for us to those properties. Those things could be in a I don't know, basically not allowed, so that there would be some access to those properties. And we're 150 feet back, and at 150 feet back, we're still within the code, still within the fire code. Is that my favorite scenario? No. It's not, but it's still within the code. So those are things that we would look at and we would work with. But the better the access, the wider it is, the more opportunity I have to get a truck into a second story home. If there needs to be a rescue occurring there, that's going to be on my mind. So those are things that raise concern, but I don't think it's impossible.
The turn off Harding onto 23rd looks very tight.
Yeah, it's also an issue. Harding itself creates some issues, but that being improved, if that were widened and it's also widened down in the 23rd area, I think we can. I believe Joe is referring to the house on the corner there has a possibility of cutting that corner as well. So if we have some of the corners cut back for us, it makes it a lot more accessible.
Yeah, it's on the triage list. I can tell you that. It's on life support. Recently, this particular year, the Public Works has processed a bid posting and a council approval for a contractor to do some overlay paving around town on quite a few streets, one of which is Harding Street. And it includes 23rd Avenue too. Because of construction necessary, that may be delayed some, but the Harding Street is proposed to be basically a pre-level for all of the divots and whatnot, and then an overlay across the top of it. I do not remember the exact width. It's either 21 or 22 feet wide. I can't remember exactly. That's a wild guess. But it's on the list to actually be done.
So is that an
This year.
actual overlay or is that a chip seal kind of
No,
situation?
this is an actual overlay.
Oh.
This is a true 2-inch, maybe 2.5 in the center crown overlay, a structural overlay of that roadway. Not a chip seal, for example, around the corner on 29th Avenue. And we're able to do that, and there's no, particularly because there's no ADA improvements necessary also on an unimproved street. But we can at least get good, smooth asphalt paving on Harding. I believe after that, they're going to do some drainage improvements as well. Right now, they are planning to do that all this summer, this construction season. Yeah. Which is sorely needed and long awaited.
Does the city have other storm detention ponds in the area, in this neighborhood?
Yes.
Well, not exactly. Close, but not exactly. There may appear to be some stormwater detention basins, but they are all under the current ownership of the private property owner of the original subdivision, the original subdivider. So there is a consideration that the city would possibly deal with those detention basins, but at the current standard is no. We have neither the time nor the resources to do that. So unlike in a lot of other cities, we do not take care of somebody else's stormwater detention basin. And that was my advocation point in the report. That stormwater that belongs to the subdivision needs to be taken care of by the subdivision, not the local city.
Do we anticipate that water would just sit in there and pond and have nowhere to go?
No, it does have a controlled outlet. Like most subdivisions, that is an area to pond water and hold it during a storm event, release it slowly to the same rate as what's coming off of it right now, which is just grassland. And that outlet is controlled to go into the channel that's along the north property line. That outlet is right there at 23rd Avenue. So that will actually help that channel and those properties along Harding Street, because probably it will only be the minimal backyards of those properties that will actually naturally grade slope to that channel. The impervious surface of the roof, the driveways, the front yards, the side yards, everything will go out to the street, from the street into the detention basin, and that's controlled in its outlet flow rate.
So the development could alleviate some of the neighborhood
Yes,
flooding and ponding.
right.
Okay.
Yes, because right now it's uncontrolled
Right.
and it's overland sheet flow right off that hillside,
Okay.
which is why there's a need to have an easement and a catchment system along the south property to catch what's coming down the hill, because obviously water flows downhill before it gets into somebody's backyard, before it gets into somebody's crawl space, and they need to have a sump pump to push it back out to the street.
Yeah.
Retention pond right there. And it isn't working.
Is there a detention pond or some type of facility at the corner of 27th and Foothills? Right.
Yes.
And
Yes,
is
there
that belong to the subdivision owner,
Yes.
not the city?
Not the city.
And this
not at
one
all.
would belong to the city with this new development, or still the private?
Private.
It
The
would be
subdivision
private.
owner will own that.
Okay.
And sometimes the subdivision owner will create an HOA, sometimes not. Sometimes it will remain under the ownership of the originator. And more often than not, 15 to 20 years later, with a lack of maintenance, you'll end up with a bunch of trees in it. And as it does right now, indeed.
Okay.
And then it's the reality of it. That's part of a commentary on my part. My apologies. However, it's true. So it is the responsibility of the private person, private party, take care of the subdivision.
Okay. And what kind of enforcement would the city have if that weren't being done?
Boss, would you like to address that?
It's basically it's a code enforcement issue, a code compliance issue. I mean, you have
Yeah.
property owners who are not taking care of their property.
Mhm.
So we would enforce that against the owner of the property. If the owner is an HOA, then it would go against that HOA or the collective members of that HOA. And if it's private property that's just a single owner, it would go against that single owner. It's and I agree with Joe. It's not a great system. If we had a real stormwater system, then I would certainly be in favor of the city taking this on. But we don't have the capacity to do that, and that's something that I know the council is looking at more now, especially given some of the rain events we've had recently.
Mhm.
But the reality is that we have I think it's $1 per home per month for stormwater fee, and that's only enough to pay half of a person for a year. So that we just don't have any funding for stormwater.
Okay. Coincidentally, I just happened to notice when we were reviewing the home occupation for the notary, the site plan has several flagged lots and shared driveways on Long Street. So I just saw that.
Typically, yeah,
Caught my eye.
I don't think anybody likes flag lots. They exist solely so that people can later subdivide a property that was a certain size and then later partitioned.
Yeah.
Typically used as an infill
May I
product.
comment on
It's
that?
an
just
infill
briefly?
thing.
And this is unrelated to what we're talking about tonight, but many, many years ago, the city had subdivisions, had lots, streets with extremely deep lots. And we've had to live with those. We've got a lot of flagged lots that there really isn't any choice on. And this isn't one of them.
Right. Right.
I am familiar with this Keys Street and Antioch over in Lebanon. I do know that the difference between this and what's being proposed are the lot sizes also. These are minimum 5,000 square foot lots, and that does include inclusion of the flag into that square footage. So those are dinky crammed in lots there. The ones on Jaden, which are further south, are larger lots. And these are 8,000 square foot lots on what they're proposing, not including any square footage allotted towards a flag. So they're true 8,500 square foot lots. So those are going to be pretty roomy lots back there. So I don't think aesthetically it's going to look just like this, because this is not the best, prettiest neighborhood in Lebanon for sure. And we do not, I would not like to see that here.
All right. Nobody has any other questions for staff?
This is discussion time, right?
Correct.
So I'm going to babble on, excuse me, and I'll turn this on for everybody from here.
No, you just turned it off.
Try again.
Try
There
again.
you go.
There you go.
Well, here are just some of my thoughts. Lot A would be basically given to the city. That's no problem then if you want to do a storm retention area. It would be no problem to round the corner because it's in the city's authority. I feel strongly that we really need to widen 23rd. We're not going to talk too much about Harding, which is the worst street in Sweet Home, paved wise. But if I were the developer, I went, and I'm not going to give up that easily. But you could talk to 3 owners and continue Foothills to the west. Maybe 4 owners. You could even go over talk to the Giles. We talk about 150 feet for the fire trucks and apparatus. Recently, we just approved one on the end of 23rd, where the fire trucks won't go into the area, but they'll stay down at the next intersection. So my preference tonight would be to continue this hearing and give the property owner and the engineers an opportunity to come up with some other ideas, to work with the city, to work with some other property owners, and just see if you can open up some other opportunities. That's what I'd like to say.
So I agree with Henry. I'd like to continue this hearing at a later time and have a representative of the developer come who would be able to talk about how to reconfigure the driveways.
And if it takes a couple of meetings, so be it.
Well, I think we're definitely doing our due diligence, basically asking for a redesign.
Turn your mic on.
Mine's on. I'll snuggle up. My battery might be going dead. I think we are doing our due diligence by requesting a redesign or looking at a redesign to address a lot of the issues we spoke about, to see them on paper. The radius corner from Foothills to 23rd, the change in configuration of the connections of the existing Foothills Drive and the new proposed version. Maybe they can even come up with a possible solution if Foothills were to aim toward Mountain View. But the current configuration isn't that bad, but changing the lot size and configuration to maybe eliminate some of those easements to access the back lots. My concern with a lot of those easements, obviously people will park on them at some point, whether it's a birthday party or whatever, they will park on them. And then it becomes an issue of parking enforcement and who takes care of that. So, issues to be addressed. They may have anything else they'd like to add? Concerns or issues? Commissioner Stevens?
I think everything's been covered that I'm concerned with.
Okay.
I guess I would just say that the applicant designed this based upon our Sweet Homes Development Code and things that are allowed in Sweet Homes Development Code, and has met or would meet the criteria that staff is imposing. So I guess I would be against continuing the hearing, and asking them to redesign and go to more expense to do that.
I'd like to ask another question, probably of the staff, but when we talk about how wet this area is.
Yeah, you just turn it off. Turn your mic back on.
Turn it back on.
There you go.
Is there some kind of a drainage on the south end of all of these lots?
So
at the bottom of the hillside?
No.
There will be during the design and construction, but there is no drainage collection right now. The stormwater runoff just sheet flows down the hill and across the flat base area, and then into that east-west channel that's along the north property line. The development, in whatever form, will need to capture in some way that off-site water coming onto the property and control it and take it. But there is nothing right now. No channel, no swale, nothing.
Okay, as this hearing continues, if that's the decision we make tonight, that ought to be one of the items to be addressed.
So just to speak to that, we have building code and we have standards that developers need to meet when it comes to stormwater, and typically that's more of at a later stage when those engineered drawings get created and go through the building permit process for that. So what I'm saying is that their responsibility as developers of the property is to ensure that they are not making the stormwater worse for any of their neighbors, that they're taking care of the problem. And so that would be part of that design process to handle the flow of water coming down and making sure that it's not affecting the new houses, making sure that it's channeled appropriately so that it's not making any of their neighbors in a worse off state.
Thank you. We understand. Are you ready for motion?
I think we are.
So one more thing, if you are going to continue the meeting, you'll need to specify the date that you continue it to. And I would suggest getting the input of the applicant because we need to make sure we give them sufficient time to make any changes.
Do you have a suggested date?
Well, our normal planning commission meeting is the first Monday of every month. And then for our review of our development code, we've opened up the third Monday. of every month as well. And so those are the times. So 2 weeks from tonight is the next meeting. And then June 7th, I believe, is the meeting following that.
However, can I?
Talk to the applicant about how long they would need to get back to us with modifications.
Can I add to that? Just keep in mind that it's actually 1 week less because I have to send the packets out the week before the meeting. So they actually have 1 week less than what the meeting is when our meeting dates are. So keep that in mind when you choose the date, because there's not that 2 week or 4 week period. It'll be 1 week or 3 week. So I just wanted to add that so you guys would understand that it's not a full 2 or 4 weeks.
I would suggest, Mr. Chairman, that you invite the applicant back and ask if June 7th would be sufficient.
Okay, we will look at that. We will reopen the hearing at 9:32. Public comment. If we could have our applicant come back up. So at this point, the question is, how long before you think you could come with a viable redesign? If you could make the deadline for the June 7th Planning Commission, which would mean you'd actually have until May 31st to have something prepared and into staff so that mailings could occur.
I would have to discuss that with my
Okay.
designers and see if they can meet that.
It is a pretty tight deadline.
I think they can do it, but I don't want to speak on their behalf.
So
correct.
What we could do then, because the reason why we continue things rather than just have them apply again is that if you continue it, it means we don't have to publish notice in the newspaper again, which can be expensive and get all the notices out to the neighboring property owners. So by announcing a date tonight, it allows anybody who is interested enough to come tonight, gives them notice of when to come next time. So what we could do is we could set June 7th as being the next date. And then if the applicant is not ready, we would open up the public hearing on that date and then just continue it to a later date.
Okay.
So that